The air in the Volkov citadel tasted like ash and aged blood. Kaelen Thorne moved like a shadow given purpose, his dark, armored suit blending seamlessly with the deep Gothic architecture. He wasn't here for conquest or glory, he was here to end a reign of terror, a promise etched in the memory of a village long consumed by night. His target, Queen Seraphina Volkov, the ancient sovereign of the vampire world. He found her not on a golden throne surrounded by guards, but in the heart of the grand chamber, a vast space dominated by towering stained-glass windows and flickering candelabras. The sight was a contradiction to every rumor of the ruthless Blood Queen. She was magnificent, a terrible beauty carved from ice and shadow. Her silver-white hair cascaded over the black velvet of her gown, contrasting sharply with the terrifying crimson that now pulsed in her eyes. The candles cast long, dancing shadows, making her seem impossibly tall. She was holding a sword, a relic stained with an unnatural, glistening red, and it was pointed not at an enemy but at her own throat. Kaelen froze, his specialized anti-vampire stake gripped tight. This wasn't the tyrannical monster he'd trained to kill. This was a queen battling a war within her own flesh. A low, guttural sound escaped her perfect lips. "Stop it," she hissed, the word directed inward. Her hand, tipped with sharp, blood-red nails, trembled violently. "I commanded you to stop." The air around her was thick with raw, uncontrolled power. The silver chains of the Chain of Binding, a mythical set of ancient relics meant to enforce loyalty, lay scattered on the altar before her, twitching as if alive. Kaelen instantly recognized the signs of the Sanguine Curse, a legendary affliction that drove the Volkov line's immense power but also pushed them into irreversible, mindless frenzy. The queen looked up, her eyes locking onto his. Kaelen felt the sheer force of her will, a wave of mental pressure that threatened to buckle his knees. But he was a Thorne hardened by decades of hunting and he held his ground. "A hunter," Seraphina rasped, a cruel smile touching her mouth. "Sent by the weak. Come to finish the job, little human?" He didn't move. "I'm here for justice." Kaelen's voice was low, devoid of emotion, a practiced mask. "Justice?" Seraphina laughed, a brittle sound that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. "There is no justice in this world, only power and thirst." Her eyes narrowed. "And you see the thirst. It consumes me. It wants to consume you." As if to prove her point, a dark, shadow-like entity, a manifestation of the curse, rippled across her skin. She stumbled, dropping the bloodied sword. It clattered on the marble floor. She lunged, not with a calculated attack, but with the desperate, flailing speed of a drowning person. Kaelen reacted instinctively. He didn't stake her. Instead, he deployed a specialized kinetic shield that shimmered with human-forged magic. Seraphina hit it, recoiling with a cry of pure, animalistic rage. The intensity of the attack shattered the last of Kaelen's assumptions. The queen wasn't just evil, she was infected. She was a prisoner in her own power. She stood breathing heavily, her chest rising and falling beneath the ornate neckline of her gown. The crimson receded slightly from her eyes, replaced by a glint of painful sanity. "It will return," Seraphina whispered, her voice barely audible. She slowly walked back to the altar, retrieving the sword and placing the tip against the ground. "When it takes hold, I am a weapon aimed at the throat of every soul in this kingdom." She looked Kaelen dead in the eye, the ancient queen seeking something in the human hunter's soul. "You want justice? You want to stop the monster?" She extended a hand, the silver chain of binding dangling from her pale fingers. "I cannot kill myself. My blood magic prevents it. But you can be my safeguard." Kaelen's grip slackened on his stake. "What are you proposing?" "I propose an oath sealed by this chain," she stated, her voice regaining its regal authority. "You will not serve me. You will protect me. Not from my enemies, Kaelen Thorne, but from myself. You will be the leash on the beast. And when the curse takes over completely, when I become the tyrant I swore never to be." Her eyes were cold, terrifyingly clear. "You will be the one to end my reign. That is your justice. That is my price." The room fell silent. Kaelen looked at the powerful, tormented being before him. To kill her now would be simple execution. To agree would mean swearing allegiance to his people's greatest enemy, all to guard her darkest secret. But his heart, long cold, felt a disturbing, unfamiliar pull, not of hate but of a shared burden. "I need your name on the oath," Seraphina insisted. Kaelen looked at the sword, then at the chain and finally into her desolate eyes. His promise to protect the vampire queen had just begun. The silence that followed Kaelen Thorne's reluctant nod was heavier than any physical blow. The Volkov citadel seemed to hold its breath, every flicker of the candelabras a silent witness to the bizarre pact sealed between a hunter and his prey. Kaelen stared at the queen's outstretched hand. The chain of binding, an ancient Volkov relic, was not merely ornamental. It was a conduit for complex blood magic, designed to forge an unbreakable link between the ruler and the oath-taker. For a human to bind himself to a vampire, let alone the vampire queen, was a transgression punishable by death in both realms. "You understand the terms, Hunter?" Seraphina stated, her voice regaining its cold, imperious edge. The momentary vulnerability had vanished, replaced by the chilling facade of the queen. "Your life is no longer your own. You are the shadow that guards the beast." Kaelen advanced, sheathing his stake with a decisive click. The raw, red glow in her eyes had receded, but the torment lingering there was far more disturbing. He took the chain, a series of dark silver links etched with glowing runes, each coin-sized medallion bearing the Volkov crest. It felt unnervingly warm in his gloved hands. "I understand," Kaelen confirmed, his gaze unflinching. "But my terms are also clear, Your Majesty. I am your protector, not your puppet. If the curse leads you to endanger innocence, I will stand against you regardless of this chain." Seraphina's lips curled into a fleeting, cynical smile. "A predictable human condition, the need for moral high ground. Very well, Hunter. That is precisely what I require, a conscience I can no longer trust in myself." She took one end of the chain and placed it over her own neck. The silver immediately heated up, the runes flaring crimson against her pale skin. Kaelen followed suit, draping the other end over his black-armored form. As the final, largest medallion settled against his sternum, a searing heat shot through him. The runes on his side glowed with a deep, pulsating orange, intertwining with the red glow on Seraphina's. It wasn't just a physical bond, it was a devastating merger of their senses, a psychic link that throbbed with the combined weight of their oaths. Kaelen gasped, momentarily losing his footing. He felt a sudden, profound rush of Seraphina's ancient loneliness, the crushing burden of immortality, and the visceral, hungry urge of the Sanguine Curse deep in her core. It was horrifying, seductive, and almost overwhelming. Seraphina braced herself, her expression unreadable. She felt Kaelen's presence too, the sharp clarity of a hunter's training, the burning loyalty he carried for his own kind, and a hidden layer of grief that resonated with her own despair. "The bond is complete," Seraphina whispered, her voice husky. "We are linked, Kaelen Thorne. You feel my curse, I feel your resolve. Do not mistake this connection for affection. Nor should you mistake my duty for devotion," Kaelen shot back, pulling the remnants of his emotional shield back into place. He looked at the vast, empty hall around them. "Now we have a mutual problem. You have enemies who will capitalize on your weakness. Lord Valerius, I presume?" Seraphina stiffened. She walked gracefully to a nearby pedestal where a goblet filled with deep red liquid sat. It wasn't blood, it was a carefully prepared sanguine elixir meant to dull the curse. "Valerius is my cousin and a master vampire obsessed with the throne," she confirmed, taking a slow, measured sip. "He knows the curse is accelerating. He assumes I will soon descend into madness and destroy myself, leaving the path clear for him." She gestured towards Kaelen's abandoned stake. "You were his final insurance plan, weren't you? If he couldn't wait for my self-destruction, a human assassin would suffice." Kaelen felt a cold spike of realization. He hadn't just failed his mission, he'd been a pawn in a vampire coup. His mentor, Elias, had been so insistent on this necessary assassination. "My contact was too eager," Kaelen muttered. He pushed the timeline. "That explains the faulty intelligence." "Then you are now a traitor to both realms, Hunter," Seraphina said, a flicker of amusement in her eyes. "A fugitive guarding the most wanted creature in the land. How delightfully inconvenient." "Convenient or not, the vow is made," Kaelen asserted. He scanned the magnificent chamber, his tactical mind now fully engaged. "This citadel is too exposed. Valerius will use this chamber's open nature to stage his move. We need better security protocols and we need to understand how the chain and the curse interact." Seraphina, momentarily impressed by his swift, practical shift from assassin to strategist, nodded slowly. "The dungeons contain a shielded library, the Vault of Kings. Only I have access and it holds the history of the Sanguine Curse. We start there." As they moved toward the secret door hidden behind the altar, Kaelen felt a jolt through the chain. It was the curse, a low humming vibration of need, but this time it was different. It wasn't trying to overwhelm her, it was reacting to the proximity of Lord Valerius. He's near, Kaelen warned, placing a hand over the chain's medallion. I felt a surge through the link. Anger. Power. Valerius knows I'm still alive, and he knows I didn't finish the job. Seraphina's expression hardened. The arrogance of that male. He believes himself untouchable. She looked back at Kaelen, her eyes flashing with a mix of fury and necessity. You are my shield now, Hunter. Do not fail me. My promise is to the oath, not to your survival, Queen, Kaelen reminded her, drawing a specialized energy blade from his wrist guard. If Valerius attacks, you must remain in control. Fight him, not the curse. Just as they reached the secret door, the heavy iron doors of the grand chamber were thrown open with a resounding crash. Standing silhouetted against the distant, moonlit windows was Lord Valerius, flanked by two enormous, armored vampire guards. He was impeccably dressed in dark aristocratic leathers, his features sharp, cruel, and radiating cold confidence. My dear cousin, Valerius's voice boomed, dripping with mock concern. I heard a peculiar disturbance. And look what I found, the pathetic end of your reign, consorting with a human traitor. Valerius's gaze fell on the silver chain linking Kaelen and Seraphina. His amused expression dissolved into pure, venomous rage. The chain of binding? You have dared to link yourself to filth? You have signed your own death warrant, Seraphina. And the line ends here. He raised his hand. Kill the human. Bring the queen to me. Gently. The guards immediately lunged, two dark blurs aiming for Kaelen. This was it, the first test of their alliance. Kaelen didn't hesitate. He thrust Seraphina back toward the hidden door. Get to the vault. Kaelen commanded, drawing a second energy blade. I'll hold them. The vow is protection, remember? Seraphina paused for a heart-stopping second. A look of fierce respect, and maybe something more dangerous, flared in her eyes. The chain pulled taut as Kaelen sprinted into the fight. Do not die, Hunter, Seraphina ordered, her voice firm. You belong to me now. She slipped through the secret door just as the first vampire guard lunged for Kaelen's throat. Kaelen met the attack head-on, the glow of his energy blades a defiant light in the dark, ancient chamber. The battle for the queen's survival, and the integrity of Kaelen's impossible promise, had just erupted. The clash of metal and the roar of enraged vampires shattered the sanctity of the grand chamber. Kaelen Thorne moved with brutal efficiency, his two energy blades a blur of defensive arcs. The specialized blades, powered by a small human-forged rune, were lethal to vampires, searing through their unnatural resilience. The two guards, massive and fueled by Lord Valerius's command, attacked with synchronized savagery. Valerius, positioned safely by the entrance, watched with an icy smirk, assuming the human would be quickly torn apart. The first guard lunged low, its claws aiming for Kaelen's legs. Kaelen pivoted, bringing his left blade down in a horizontal sweep that forced the vampire back, leaving a smoking trail on its armored chest. The second guard struck high, trying to pin him against the altar. As the second guard's heavy fist slammed into his shoulder, Kaelen felt a flash of white-hot agony, but not from the physical impact. It was a sharp, distinct pain that originated from the chain of binding pressed against his chest. Seraphina is in danger, the chain pulsed into his mind, an involuntary signal from the queen. Not external danger, internal. The brief distraction cost him. The first guard recovered and drove a massive shoulder into Kaelen, sending him skidding across the marble. His back hit a pillar with crushing force. You are just a man, Valerius sneered from the distance. And now you are a toy. Kill him slowly, tear him piece by piece. Let his death serve as a lesson in loyalty. Kaelen struggled to his feet. He could feel the Sanguine Curse thrumming through the chain. Seraphina was struggling to maintain control under the stress of the attack, and Valerius's presence was clearly agitating the dark magic within her. His promise was not just to survive, but to ensure she survived without succumbing to the beast. He had to get out. Kaelen feigned a direct charge toward Valerius, knowing the guards would intercept. As they closed in, he slammed his boot against the base of the pillar, sending shards of marble flying. Then, with a sudden, desperate maneuver, he didn't attack the guards, but the candelabras lining the aisle. One blade sliced through the metal stand of a candelabra, sending hundreds of wax-covered candles crashing to the ornate, oil-slicked marble floor. Whoosh! The resulting inferno was immediate, fueled by the ancient, dry materials of the chamber and the spilled oils. Vampire vision was superior, but their physical forms were vulnerable to true fire. The guards howled, momentarily blinded and disoriented by the unexpected heat and smoke. This was the opening Kaelen needed. He snatched one of the discarded silver medallions from the chain of binding that had been lying on the altar, a small but potent source of magic. Valerius, his aristocratic composure shattered by the fire, shrieked. "Stop him. He's escaping." Kaelen hurled the silver medallion not at Valerius, but at the enormous stained-glass window high above the altar, the only source of natural light. The enchanted silver, driven by Kaelen's training, struck true. The ancient, magically reinforced glass exploded outward in a deafening cascade of tinkling shards. A blast of frigid night air and a thin sliver of moonlight poured into the suffocating chamber. Kaelen launched himself towards the small secret doorway through which Seraphina had vanished, relying on the cover of the smoke and the chaos of the fire. He plunged into the darkness of the passage, the roar of Valerius's rage the last sound he heard before the heavy stone slab sealed shut behind him. He was in a service tunnel winding beneath the citadel. The chain on his chest pulsed urgently, guiding him. Down. Further down. Shielded tunnel. East wing. The psychic link was a double-edged sword. It provided direction, but it also flooded his senses with Seraphina's emotional chaos, a terrifying cocktail of self-loathing, intense predatory hunger, and a flicker of relief that he hadn't abandoned her. Kaelen ran until the passage opened into the Vault of Kings, a circular, high-domed library lined with ancient, dust-covered scrolls and thick tomes. Seraphina was standing in the center, not resting, but intensely focused on a single, massive, copper-bound book. She was still fighting the curse, her hands balled into fists, the crimson occasionally flashing in her eyes. "You took your time," she managed, her voice strained. "Your loyal cousin brought backup," Kaelen retorted, catching his breath. He pulled a small silver ampoule from his gear and injected a mild stimulant into his thigh. "Valerius knows about the chain now. He won't assume you're merely in league with me. He'll believe you've lost control and bonded with a human to gain a martyr. It makes the coup easier for him," Seraphina conceded, running a gloved finger over the copper book. "He'll claim the throne under the guise of saving the Volkov line from my madness." "Exactly," Kaelen said, his hunter's logic sharp and precise. "Which means he'll be hunting us, not just you. We need to disappear, Your Majesty." He stepped closer, noticing the frantic glow of the chain on her neck. "What are you doing? The curse is getting stronger." "This book contains the final words of the first Volkov king," Seraphina explained, ignoring the pain. "The curse is not a flaw, it's a failsafe. It was designed to turn the ruler into a destructive force if they broke the founding laws of the realm. I need to know which law I broke so I can fix it before the beast takes over permanently." "Lawbreaking is the least of your problems right now," Kaelen argued. "Valerius controls the citadel. We need a safe haven, a place where a hunter and his queen can hide." Seraphina's eyes, now dangerously bright, locked onto his. "And where would a hunter of my species hide, Kaelen?" Kaelen felt a reluctant answer form in his mind. There was only one place. The secret human stronghold, the very sanctuary that had trained him, the place that now viewed him as a traitor. "The human realm," Kaelen stated flatly. "My old mentor Elias. He leads the Council of the Dawn. If I can convince him that your downfall will lead to Valerius's rise, he might help. But I have to contact him discreetly." Seraphina let out a cynical sound. "You trust a mortal hunter to aid his greatest enemy? They will kill you both the moment you cross the border." "My promise," Kaelen said, tapping the medallion. "My resolve. Is what you bought. And unlike your cousin, I don't break my word." He reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a tightly folded ancient piece of paper, a map of hidden, abandoned tunnels beneath the citadel that led to the city's undersewers. "I need to go alone," Kaelen insisted. "The chain makes you a walking beacon. Valerius's tracking magic is attuned to Volkov blood. But he won't expect a human signal." Seraphina seemed to consider this, a deep, weary tension settling over her features. For the first time, she looked less like a queen, and more like a desperate woman placing her last trust in an enemy. "Fine," she conceded. "But you will take this with you." She handed him a single small vial filled with a shimmering viscous liquid, pure, concentrated blood, pulsating with magic. "It is my essence. If I fall to the curse while you are gone, smash it. It will break the chain, freeing you and momentarily incapacitate the beast, long enough for you to end me and fulfill your promise." It was a terrible trust. Kaelen looked at the vial, then at the queen. His life was now bound to the woman he was sworn to destroy, and the one thing that could save him was the tool of her final, painful execution. "I will return," Kaelen promised, taking the vial. "Until then, stay within these shields. Do not answer any summons. Your silence is your only defense. He turned and disappeared into a narrow ventilation shaft, heading toward the surface world and the traitor's path, the warm, pulsating chain his only compass back to the Queen. The stench of the undercity tunnels was a harsh assault on Kaelen's senses, a stark contrast to the chilled, blood-tinged air of the Citadel. Sewage, wet earth, and the faint, metallic tang of forgotten infrastructure replaced the scent of ancient velvet and wine. Kaelen moved quickly through the darkness, the map Seraphina had given him, an unlikely gift from a vampire queen, proving accurate. He was deep within the labyrinthine underbelly of Viridia, the capital city that stretched above, oblivious to the monstrous politics unfolding beneath its foundations. Every step was a risk. If Valerius's scouts found him, he was dead. If the Human Council's patrol caught him, he was also dead, only slower, facing execution for treason. The chain of binding was a constant, unsettling presence. It no longer merely pulsed, it ached with Seraphina's concentrated effort to control the Sanguine Curse. The psychic link was a torrent of abstract sensation, the cold loneliness of her stone prison, the dizzying hunger, and a deep-seated fear of herself. Focus, Hunter, Kaelen commanded himself, shaking his head to clear the intrusive thoughts. She's alive. That's all that matters. His immediate goal was to reach an old, abandoned communication post hidden in the deeper sewage lines, a relic from the last war, known only to the senior members of the Council of the Dawn. It was the only way to contact Elias, his former mentor. After nearly an hour of navigating tight, claustrophobic passages, Kaelen found the post. It was a rusted metal box embedded in a crumbling brick wall, sealed by a magnetic lock. Kaelen used a small multi-purpose hacking tool to bypass the security, the small device humming softly in the darkness. The system came online with a faint whir. Kaelen punched in Elias's encrypted frequency. The screen flashed, then settled on a grainy image of a weary-looking silver-haired man, Elias. State your codename and purpose. Elias's voice crackled, devoid of any warmth. It's Thorne. I'm in the south sector. I need a secure, immediate extraction. Elias's eyes narrowed, all weariness instantly replaced by a sharp, lethal suspicion. Thorne is reported compromised. Last confirmed visual was inside the Volkov citadel. Your assassination attempt failed. It didn't fail, Kaelen corrected, his voice firm. It shifted. Elias, I have information that affects the entire balance of power. Valerius is making a move on the throne. He is more volatile and more dangerous than Seraphina. The Queen is a monster, Kaelen. What could be worse? Elias spat the word queen like venom. And why are you not dead? Our sources confirmed you were seen with the chain of binding. Kaelen knew this was the point of no return. He had to tell the unbelievable truth. I made a pact with Seraphina. I am her protector, Elias. I swore an oath to contain the curse and prevent her from descending into the madness that Valerius is counting on. Silence stretched between them, thick and damning. Elias stared at Kaelen's digitized face, then slowly ran a hand over his own. You've gone mad, Elias finally whispered, the horror in his voice more profound than his previous anger. You have bonded with the enemy. You are no longer Kaelen Thorne, Hunter of the Dawn. You are a traitor of the human realm. Listen to me. Kaelen pleaded, the urgency in his voice rising. Valerius is a tyrant in waiting. Seraphina is a controlled variable, a self-aware threat who is trying to stop herself. If Valerius takes over, the vampire wars will start again within a week. Elias's jaw set hard. The council has already issued an order. You are to be apprehended, Kaelen. Your assets are frozen, your codename revoked. You have betrayed everything we stand for. And if I bring you proof of Valerius's conspiracy? Proof that he intends to break the peace treaty? The only proof we want is the Queen's head, and yours beside it for your treachery, Elias concluded coldly. Do not contact me again, Kaelen. If you enter the human safe zones, you will be shot on sight. The connection cut, leaving Kaelen alone in the suffocating darkness of the tunnels. The betrayal hurt, not because he was now without allies, but because Elias's rejection was the final, irreversible severance from his former life. His promise to Seraphina had cost him everything. As Kaelen was about to turn, he heard a sound, not the scuttling of sewer rats, but the rhythmic military tap-tap of boots on wet stone. Halt. Identify yourself. A team of 4 armed human sentinels, dressed in dark camouflage armor, rounded the corner. They were council patrol, armed with stun rifles and anti-vampire gear, and they were looking for him. It's the traitor Kaelen Thorne, one of them yelled, raising his rifle. Stand down, Thorne. You're under arrest for high treason and consorting with vampires. Kaelen knew he couldn't use lethal force against them, they were his people. But he also knew that arrest meant being imprisoned until Seraphina was apprehended, and if he was captured, Seraphina would be vulnerable to Valerius. His vow compelled him to escape. I am not your enemy, Kaelen shouted, throwing a flashbang grenade into the center of the patrol. The explosion of white light and sound momentarily deafened the sentinels. Kaelen used the distraction not to fight but to run, scrambling into a smaller, submerged pipe. He moved on instinct, fueled by the desperate need to return to the vault. As he ran, the chain gave a sudden, terrifying lurch. The familiar ache of the curse intensified into a blinding, cold terror. Seraphina. He felt a distinct, external intrusion on her mind, a powerful, malicious force pressing against her psychic shield. It was Valerius. The usurper had found a way to reach her, even in the shielded vault. Kaelen plunged through the pipe, emerging into a secondary tunnel, his armor slick with grime. He looked down at the vial of Seraphina's essence in his hand. It was now pulsing faintly, mirroring the frantic glow of the chain. He had failed to secure the human alliance, and now Seraphina was under direct attack from Valerius's mental magic. His window of safety had snapped shut. The only choice was to race back to the Citadel, risking capture and confrontation to fulfill the impossible promise. Protect the Queen, even from herself. Right now, he had to protect her from Valerius's ambition. Kaelen reversed course, plunging back into the deeper, darker tunnels that led back to the Volkov Citadel, his escape now a desperate race against time. Kaelen's return to the Volkov Citadel was a reckless scramble against the clock. He moved through the subsewer tunnels and back into the Citadel's abandoned ventilation shafts, relying purely on the internal map etched in his memory. The closer he got, the more the chain of binding screamed in his mind. The psychic intrusion on Seraphina was no longer a pulse. It was a rhythmic, agonizing hammering. Valerius was trying to exploit the stress of the situation, pushing Seraphina's fragile control over the Sanguine Curse past its breaking point. Stop resisting, cousin. Embrace the hunger. Let the throne be cleansed, Valerius's thought, amplified by the chain's link, slammed into Kaelen's own consciousness. Kaelen gritted his teeth, forcing himself to ignore the intrusive voices. He emerged near the secret entrance to the Vault of Kings, his dark suit now smeared with tunnel grime and sweat. He found Seraphina precisely where he had left her, standing over the copper-bound book. But she was no longer in control. The air in the vault was frigid and charged with unstable magic. Seraphina's eyes were entirely crimson, her silver hair seemingly standing on end, flowing with dark energy. Her regal gown was torn at the shoulder where she had involuntarily clawed herself. Kaelen, she gasped, the sound a strangled mixture of relief and predatory hunger. She was leaning heavily on the central pedestal, fighting a battle with every muscle in her body. He found the mental conduit. He's telling me to destroy the book. He's winning. The curse was visibly manifesting. Dark, shadow-like tendrils pulsed beneath her skin, making her movements jerky and unnatural. This was the monster Kaelen had promised to contain. You need to break the link. Kaelen commanded, rushing toward her. I can't. Seraphina cried out, stumbling backward. The vault shields my body but my mind is exposed. His power is too great. Go. As she yelled the word go, the curse seized full control for a terrifying moment. Her features sharpened, her mouth pulled back into a feral snarl, and the terrifying hunger Kaelen had only felt through the chain was now aimed directly at him. Blood! The beast within Seraphina screamed, her voice deep and distorted. She lunged with blinding speed, a force of nature driven by ancient thirst. Kaelen had only half a second to react. He didn't raise his blades, he couldn't kill her. He brought up his armored forearms, crossing them just as Seraphina's enhanced strength slammed into him. He was thrown against the wall of scrolls. The pain was immense, but the impact was secondary to the chilling realization. His protector role had just begun. The chain of binding flared to life. The moment Seraphina's hand, tipped with those murderous claws, made contact with his armor, the silver links on his chest pulsed violently with an orange light, sending a wave of agonizing psychic feedback directly into Seraphina's mind. The chain, sworn to protect him as a conduit of her sanity, was resisting her attack. Seraphina recoiled with a primal shriek of pain. The crimson in her eyes flickered, the rational queen momentarily resurfacing through the haze. It works, she whispered, clutching her head. The pain of the oath, it fights the curse. It's a failsafe, not a cure, Kaelen wheezed, pushing himself up, his armor heavily dented. He pulled the small vial of Seraphina's concentrated essence from his pocket. Valerius is still trying to get in. We need to sever the mental link now, or I use this to break the chain. Seraphina's eyes widened at the sight of the vial, the ultimate escape, the tool of her annihilation. No, she said, shaking her head violently. Not yet. I need that book. She fought through the residual pain of the chain's defense and staggered back to the central pedestal, her gaze fixed on the copper-bound tome. The book speaks of a forgotten law, Seraphina muttered, deciphering the ancient runes on the cover. The first king decreed, the throne shall remain empty unless the queen chooses a consort to share the sanguine burden. I never took a consort. I chose loneliness to avoid creating a rival. That is the broken law. Kaelen stared at her, the absurdity of the revelation hitting him even amidst the chaos. You mean the curse is punishing you for being single? It is punishing me for prioritizing power over the kingdom's stability, she snapped, running her fingers over the pages. The consort shares the mental load, halves the curse's power. But the bond must be sealed with true devotion, a bond stronger than blood. Suddenly the vault door began to pound with crushing force. Valerius was outside, enraged by Seraphina's renewed resistance, and had brought powerful magical devices to breach the shield. He's coming in, Kaelen stated, energy blades snapping out from his gauntlets. We don't have time for ancient marriage laws. What's the solution? Seraphina looked at Kaelen, her expression a frightening mix of calculated strategy and feral need. Her crimson eyes locked onto his, and the chain between them glowed with furious intensity. There is no time to find a loyal vampire, she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. And your promise is the strongest vow I possess. She grabbed Kaelen's armored wrist with startling strength. Our chain is a vow of protection. It is the beginning of devotion. We must reinforce the bond. It won't be a true consort bond, but it will be a powerful enough psychic shield to repel Valerius's attack and suppress the curse, temporarily. How? Kaelen demanded. The chain requires a shared sacrifice to increase its power, Seraphina hissed, the pounding on the door becoming deafening. She pulled the bloodied sword, the one seen in the thumbnail, from the pedestal. Before Kaelen could protest, Seraphina brought the tip of the blade down hard, not on him but across her own palm, drawing a heavy well of her powerful Volkov blood. Your blood, hunter, she commanded, holding out her bleeding hand. A shared pain. A greater promise. The irony was stark. Kaelen had entered the citadel to shed her blood, and now he was willingly offering his own life force to save her. Kaelen didn't hesitate. He activated a tiny needle in his palm armor, drawing a painful stream of his own human blood onto his gloved hand. He pressed his bleeding hand to hers, the two liquids, ancient vampire blood and trained human blood, mingling on the silver chain. The chain flared blindingly white. A wave of energy erupted from the central medallion, throwing Kaelen and Seraphina apart. The moment the energy subsided, Kaelen looked at Seraphina. Her eyes were still burning, but the crimson was now contained, held back by an invisible, powerful barrier. The psychic noise from Valerius was suddenly muted, a distant, frustrated growl. The Sanguine Curse was still there, but it was subdued. Kaelen's promise, and his shared blood, had fortified the shield. The door burst inward, stone dust filling the air. Lord Valerius stood in the entryway, his face contorted in disbelief and malice, flanked by his guards. He looked at the two figures standing shoulder to shoulder, the human and the queen, both marked by blood and the glowing chain of binding. Treasonous dogs. Valerius roared. You have sealed your own fate. No human can protect the Volkov line from its destiny. Kaelen stepped slightly forward, placing his armored body between Valerius and Seraphina. His eyes, fixed on Valerius, were clear, cold, and utterly resolved. My promise is absolute, Kaelen stated. I promise to protect the vampire queen. And you, Lord Valerius, are a threat to that promise. The stage was set for their first face-to-face confrontation. The air in the Vault of Kings crackled with unspent energy. Lord Valerius stood framed in the broken doorway, his aristocratic fury a tangible force. He stared at the glowing chain of binding and the mingled human and vampire blood on their hands, his rage eclipsing his usual calculating composure. You disgrace the Volkov name, Seraphina? Valerius shrieked, advancing. This filth, he spat, nodding at Kaelen, will be your undoing. Seize them both. Bring the human's head to me on a platter, and lock the queen in the deepest dungeon. His two remaining armored guards, massive figures of brute force, obeyed instantly, surging into the room. Kaelen didn't wait. His role as the protector was purely tactical now. He launched a volley of sonic emitters, small, non-lethal devices from his hunter gear, at the stone walls surrounding the guards. The resulting high-frequency shriek was designed to disrupt the sensitive hearing of the vampires, momentarily staggering them. As the guards clutched their heads, Kaelen engaged Valerius directly. He knew he couldn't beat the master vampire in a straight fight, but he could buy time. Kaelen focused his attack entirely on disruption. His energy blades aimed not at Valerius's body, but at the mystical rings he wore, which Kaelen suspected were amplifying his psychic reach. Valerius, relying on his ancient power, batted Kaelen's attacks away with casual, disdainful swipes. "A mosquito with a sharp toy," he taunted, his eyes glowing faintly. But Kaelen's distraction was deliberate. While he held Valerius's focus, Seraphina made her move. She had retrieved the heavy, copper-bound tome. With a wordless incantation in an ancient dialect, she slammed the book onto the floor, directly over the spot where Kaelen and her blood had mingled. The contact released a blast of pure, focused Volkov magic. It wasn't an attack, it was a displacement spell, specifically targeting non-Volkov vampires, Valerius's guards. The two massive vampires vanished with a sound like tearing parchment, teleported violently to a random, distant corner of the citadel. Valerius roared, his attention finally broken. "You fool. You've used your power for escape." "I used it to ensure my reign continues, cousin," Seraphina corrected, standing beside Kaelen, the chain pulled taut between them. Kaelen seized the moment of Valerius's shock. He grabbed Seraphina's arm, his grip hard on her delicate velvet sleeve. "Now." The hidden tunnel beneath the altar. They didn't run towards the main door, they scrambled over the scattered relics towards the secret recess behind the pedestal. Valerius, recovering quickly, lunged after them, his speed inhuman. Kaelen shoved Seraphina into the narrow passage. As he followed, Valerius's razor-sharp claws raked across Kaelen's upper thigh armor. The armor held, but the force of the blow bruised Kaelen deeply. More importantly, the impact, coupled with the psychic trauma of the previous minutes, caused the chain of binding to flare with a blinding jolt of shared pain. Valerius cried out, clutching his head, momentarily stunned by the psychic feedback from the linked chain, a pain that Kaelen himself also endured. This was the true power of the strengthened vow. Harming one meant harming both, even psychically. Kaelen slammed the heavy stone door shut, locking Valerius's frustrated screams inside the vault. They dropped into a cramped, dusty tunnel, one of the many escape routes only the royal family knew. Kaelen limped slightly, his adrenaline fading. "That was too close," Kaelen muttered, pulling out his field medical kit. "You used a dangerous amount of power. The curse is still suppressed, thanks to your inconveniently noble blood," Seraphina finished, her breathing still shallow. She watched, cold and detached, as Kaelen swiftly bandaged his bruised leg. "Do not mistake my gratitude for weakness, Hunter. You are injured. My escape required your temporary utility. And my utility requires your controlled mind, Queen," Kaelen shot back, meeting her challenging gaze. "We are now connected by an impossible promise and a mutual enemy. Save the pride for when we're safe." He looked at the pulsing chain that linked their very essences. The forgotten law. The need for a consort. Valerius will find that ancient law. He will expose your failure to take a consort as the legal reason for your impending madness. He will use it to legitimize his claim. "I know," Seraphina admitted, a rare flicker of true worry crossing her face. "Which is why we cannot simply hide. We must find the true source of the Sanguine Curse's failsafe and deactivate it before Valerius presents his legal claim to the other vampire houses." "And where is the true source?" Seraphina straightened, her queenly bearing returning despite the dust and the danger. "The curse was sealed at its genesis by the blood of the first king's sacrifice. That ritual was performed at the crypt of the First Light, an ancient Volkov ruin long abandoned, deep in the northern wastes." The mention of the crypt sent a cold premonition down Kaelen's spine. It was a place steeped in myth, a supposed graveyard of failed vampire experiments. "The northern wastes," Kaelen sighed. "It's far, remote, and highly monitored by human patrols who have already identified me as a traitor." "Perfect," Seraphina said, a cold edge of determination in her voice. "The humans will be looking for a vampire queen. They won't expect me to be traveling with a traitor." She paused, looking Kaelen up and down. His black, high-tech hunter suit, designed for silent assassination, suddenly seemed perfect for an infiltration mission. The contrast between his gear and her regal, dark gown was almost comedic, yet undeniably compelling. "We need supplies, transport, and a disguise that works on human patrols," Seraphina said. "I have no currency in your world and you are a wanted criminal in mine. The alliance is unwanted, Hunter, but undeniably necessary." Kaelen finished securing his leg, the pain now a manageable throb. He felt the weight of the silver vial of Seraphina's essence in his pocket, the constant reminder of his final dreadful duty. He was now running away with the enemy he was supposed to kill, driven by a vow to save her from the monster she was destined to become. "Fine," Kaelen agreed, pushing open a heavy rusted hatch leading to the vast forested grounds outside the citadel walls. "First, we get out of the city without being spotted by Valerius's aerial scouts or my former colleagues. We head for the old merchant road, deep in the shadows." He stepped out into the cold, moonlit forest, then turned back to Seraphina. "From now on, no more Your Majesty. We are partners in this and you need to blend in. No royal decrees." Seraphina gave a subtle nod, a flicker of dry amusement in her eyes. She pulled the hood of her black velvet cape high, obscuring her striking features. "As you command, Kaelen Thorne," she replied, a hint of genuine deference in her voice. "Lead the way, Protector." The Vampire Queen and the Traitor Hunter began their perilous journey north, the glowing chain their only testament to the impossible high-stakes alliance that held the fate of two realms. The northern forest was a dense, frigid blanket of shadow, perfect for concealment but punishingly difficult for travel. Kaelen set a relentless pace, relying on his hunter training to navigate the moonlit wilderness. Seraphina, despite her heavy velvet gown and lack of practical outdoor gear, kept up with an unsettling, effortless grace. "You move well for someone accustomed to velvet cushions," Kaelen commented, his voice low, cutting through the forest hush. "Immortality provides ample time to master efficiency, Hunter," Seraphina replied dryly, pulling her thick cape tighter against the cold. "And a vampire queen's duties often involve paths far rougher than marble corridors." The chain of binding was the third entity in their unwanted alliance, a constant, low-frequency hum of shared existence. Kaelen could feel the underlying tension in her, the cold, ancient power held rigidly in check by her will. They stopped at the edge of an old, crumbling stone bridge, a suitable spot for Kaelen to re-establish a temporary, defensible perimeter. "We rest here for 2 hours," Kaelen announced, pulling supplies from his specialized pack. "I need to configure a basic tracking deterrent. Valerius will be using advanced arcane means to find your signature." Seraphina watched him work, her crimson eyes scanning his actions with detached curiosity. He laid out small, crystalline wards around the perimeter, then pulled out a nutrient bar, his dinner. "Your methods are archaic yet effective," she observed. "Why not simply kill your enemy? Why all the complexity?" "I was trained to neutralize threats with minimal collateral damage," Kaelen said, taking a bite. "And the complexity is necessary when your target is a queen protected by the very curse you're trying to prevent." He felt the chain suddenly tighten. Not with the curse, but with a palpable wave of Seraphina's frustration. "Do you enjoy reminding me of my affliction, Hunter?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Do not confuse your duty with judgment. My curse is the result of an ancient pact I inherited, not a moral failing." Kaelen paused, meeting her challenging gaze. "My promise is to protect you, not flatter you, Queen. But if you wish to talk about judgment, my former life is gone. My own mentor, Elias, considers me a traitor for this absurd alliance. I've lost everything I swore to protect. So no, I don't judge. But I need you to stay focused." The honesty, sharp and raw, seemed to momentarily disarm her. She broke eye contact, looking up at the cold, uncaring moon. "Your sacrifice is noted, Kaelen Thorne," she finally conceded, the regal coldness softening marginally. "And it is regrettable. If we survive this, perhaps there is a way to clear your name with your council." "Don't bother," Kaelen said bitterly. "They see me with this chain and they see a man who chose the enemy. There's no coming back." The admission hung heavy between them. This shared status, traitor to his world, fugitive in hers, was an unexpected bond, strengthening the connection that the chain had physically forged. Kaelen finished setting the wards and approached her with a small, folded thermal blanket. "Take this. It'll shield your heat signature from aerial scouts," he instructed, offering it to her. "And it will keep you warm." Seraphina hesitated, examining the plain, functional gray blanket with disdain. "I am a vampire, Kaelen. I do not feel cold. You feel the energy drain, and right now, every ounce of energy needs to be focused on suppressing the curse, Not compensating for the environmental temperature, Kaelen argued, his tone practical. Take it, Seraphina. It's an order from your protector. The use of the title in this mundane context, the warmth of the blanket contrasting with the cold of their relationship, forced a change in her expression. She took the blanket slowly, wrapping it around her shoulders. As she did, the chain brushed against Kaelen's hand. The physical contact, so casual yet intimate, sent an unexpected jolt through the link. This time it wasn't the pain of the curse, but a fleeting flash of something deeply human. Weariness, a craving for rest, and a sudden, intense appreciation for the simple act of warmth and protection. It was her true self, momentarily revealed through the psychic link. Kaelen pulled his hand back quickly, his heart rate accelerating. The bond was blurring the lines of their identities, making the forbidden attraction terrifyingly real. The crypt of the First Light is 2 days' travel north, Kaelen stated, his voice now strictly professional, masking the turmoil. We need to secure a better transport in the border town of Etham. A human town? Seraphina questioned, the familiar suspicion returning. That is unnecessarily risky. My presence there will be disguised, Kaelen cut in. You are an exiled noblewoman fleeing a coup, Seraphina. We will pass through Etham, secure an overland transport, and then disappear into the mountain pass. Your appearance is too distinct to risk being seen by any major power. You need to look ordinary. Seraphina's jaw tightened. Ordinary. A concept foreign to a queen. Get used to it, Kaelen replied, turning to check the wards. In this journey you're not the queen of night. You're a fugitive reliant on a traitor. Your life depends on blending in. He checked the thermal blanket again. Keep the hood up. And remember, no blood. Seraphina watched him, a strange, complicated look on her face, a mix of resentment, fascination, and growing reliance. She had commanded thousands, yet now she was taking orders from one human hunter. This shared journey was forcing her to confront not only her curse but also her own deeply entrenched prejudices. As Kaelen settled down a few feet away, leaning against a tree, he felt a faint psychic murmur through the chain, a thought that wasn't directed at him but was clearly audible. I promised him I would not break my word. I will not. But this closeness, this is dangerous. The danger was no longer just the curse or Valerius. The danger was the growing connection between the hunter and the queen. The border town of Etham was a cluster of rough-hewn timber buildings clinging to the edge of the forest, a gritty hub for merchants, smugglers, and occasional patrols from the Council of the Dawn. The atmosphere was thick with the scent of wood smoke, cheap liquor, and human sweat, a world utterly foreign to the vampire queen. Kaelen and Seraphina approached under the cloak of pre-dawn fog. Kaelen had stripped down his military armor, wearing a simple dark travel cloak over his protective undersuit. Seraphina was still clad in her distinctive black velvet, which even under the thermal blanket, screamed exiled royalty. We need to find a draper's shop, a discreet inn and transport, Kaelen instructed, his voice a low growl. Remember, you are my high-born, eccentric relative fleeing a family feud. You speak only when necessary and never mention anything about blood or magic. I understand the concept of deception, Kaelen, Seraphina replied, a hint of disdain in her tone. She kept her head bowed, the thick hood of her cloak shadowing her face, but the chain of binding still pulsed faintly beneath the fabric. As they slipped into Etham's main street, Kaelen immediately sensed the change in Seraphina. The psychic link, usually radiating controlled power and cold detachment, now buzzed with overwhelming sensory input. The noise, the smells, the dense press of human life, it was clearly an assault on her ancient vampire senses. Too many heartbeats. Too much noise. This is repulsive, her thought flashed through the chain. Focus, Seraphina, Kaelen mentally projected, using the link for the first time as a form of nonverbal control. Block the peripheral noise. Feel only the chain. He steered her into a narrow alleyway. First we fix the look. They found a small, dusty outfitter's shop. Kaelen used a small, precious pile of gold coins he had sewn into his armor to buy 2 plain, coarse woolen traveling tunics, boots, and a simple, dark cloak for Seraphina, clothes designed for warmth, not status. In the back room, Seraphina stared at the drab garments with utter contempt. I am to wear this peasant's cloth? It's invisibility, Kaelen countered, removing her heavy velvet cloak. He carefully helped her change, his fingers brushing against her pale, cold skin. The casual, forced intimacy was electrifying. The chain pulsed, reacting to the proximity, and Kaelen felt a sudden, sharp intake of Seraphina's residual loneliness mixed with mounting anxiety. He noticed her hair, the striking near-white silver that was a dead giveaway of the Volkov line. "Your hair," Kaelen said, his voice practical. "We have to darken it." Seraphina recoiled, her eyes flashing crimson. "That is impossible. The dye would reject my enchanted blood." "It's not a dye," Kaelen explained, pulling out a small, highly concentrated temporary sealant from his medical kit, designed to mask blood trails. "It will dull the silver for a day or two. It's temporary but necessary." Reluctantly she allowed him to work. Kaelen smoothed the dark, thick sealant through her hair, which quickly absorbed the color, transforming her into a striking, if austere, brunette. The change was profound. She looked less like a queen and more like a mysterious, sharp-featured traveler. "Now the final lesson," Kaelen said, handing her a small mirror. "Your aura. Control your power. Be small." Seraphina looked at the unfamiliar woman in the mirror, the woman without the crown of silver hair, clad in scratchy wool. She was horrified yet strangely fascinated. "I feel mundane," she whispered, her powerful aura momentarily shrinking to fit the disguise. With the disguise complete, they headed to the town's common tavern of the Broken Blade, a place Kaelen knew was a hotbed for transport deals and gossip. They found a dark corner. Kaelen immediately spotted an unattached carriage driver, a gruff, scarred man named Rorik, and began negotiating a multi-day trip north toward the mountain pass. While Kaelen secured the transport, Seraphina sat stiffly, trying to emulate stillness. But the air of the tavern was charged with low-level Valerius agents. Kaelen spotted two dark-cloaked figures with pale, watchful eyes, loitering near the bar, clearly monitoring for any strange activity or high-value fugitives. The chain gave a faint hiss. Seraphina was struggling. The close proximity to untasted blood was testing her limits, and the psychic link between them began to hum dangerously. Then one of the Valerius agents glanced over and his eyes widened slightly, not at Seraphina but at the chain of binding. Even muffled beneath Kaelen's tunic, the metallic sheen of the medallion was visible when Kaelen shifted. The agent, recognizing the royal crest, immediately began to move toward them. "We have company," Kaelen murmured, his hand instinctively moving to his concealed energy blades. "Valerius's scouts. Get ready to move." Seraphina looked up, her new brunette hair shadowing eyes that now shone with the terrifying, uncontrolled red of the curse. The agent was getting closer, his hand going for a concealed weapon. At that moment the curse took hold of her, not as a predatory urge, but as a violent, defensive instinct triggered by the threat. She reached out. Not physically but psychically. A brief, cold flash of Volkov magic erupted, focused directly through the chain. Kaelen felt the surge not as an attack, but as a crippling, localized mental shockwave aimed at the approaching agent. The agent stumbled mid-stride, clutching his head, his eyes glazing over as if hit by a sudden, severe migraine. He collapsed, unconscious, into a table, sending ale splashing everywhere. A moment of stunned silence fell over the tavern. "What was that?" Kaelen demanded, his voice tight. "A necessary complication," Seraphina replied, her voice strained, the crimson rapidly fading from her eyes. The physical and mental strain of the sudden power expenditure was immense. He recognized the chain. "I stunned him before he could call for backup." Rorik, the carriage driver, approached, rubbing the back of his neck nervously. "What was that commotion, mate? Looks like that fellow had too much fire ale." Kaelen seized the opportunity. "It was the ale. We need to leave now, Rorik. Double the pay if we ride through the night." Kaelen quickly threw the rest of the gold to the driver. He helped the trembling Seraphina to her feet. As he guided her out, Kaelen felt the sheer force of her power, raw and untamed, through the chain. "You used too much power," Kaelen whispered fiercely as they hurried towards the waiting carriage. "The curse is still suppressed but you risked a full lapse. You promised to control it." "I promised to survive," Seraphina countered, her breath ragged. "And I protected your position, Hunter. The dead man would have called the council and you would be captured." They climbed into the covered carriage. Rorik snapped the reins and the transport lurched forward, speeding out of Etham and onto the dark road leading to the northern wastes. Kaelen stared at Seraphina, the disguised queen who had just saved his life with a forbidden use of her terrible power. He was angry at her recklessness, yet profoundly shaken by the depth of her resolve. Their relationship was now cemented not just by a vow, but by a shared, dangerous secret and a near-lethal demonstration of her power. The carriage rattled and groaned, a rough shelter against the biting cold of the northern wastes. The landscape had transitioned from dense forest to sparse, rocky scrubland, covered in a thin, treacherous layer of frost. Rorik, the driver, drove relentlessly, his face grim, sensing the high-stakes nature of his passengers. Inside the cramped carriage, the atmosphere was suffocatingly tense. Kaelen sat opposite Seraphina, both outwardly still, but the chain of binding throbbed visibly beneath Kaelen's tunic, radiating their shared stress. "That was a mistake," Kaelen stated flatly, breaking the silence. "Using your power in Etham. It created a beacon. Valerius knows exactly where we are now." Seraphina, her dark-dyed hair and simple cloak a stark disguise, looked exhausted. The exertion of the psychic shockwave had taken a toll. "It saved your life, Hunter. The alternative was your capture, and my demise at the hands of my cousin. My promise is to protect you from the curse, not to be a casualty of your recklessness," Kaelen argued, his voice a low, fierce whisper. "Recklessness is sometimes survival," Seraphina countered, her breath visible in the cold air. She suddenly leaned forward, her eyes, though currently subdued, holding a fierce challenge. "Or would you have preferred I succumb to the Sanguine Curse and drain every heartbeat in that tavern, starting with yours?" "I chose the lesser evil, Kaelen Thorne." The raw honesty silenced him. He ran a gloved hand over the chain, feeling the intricate, now fortified silver links. "We need a new plan," Kaelen conceded, pulling out a topographical map. "The crypt of the First Light is high up in the mountains. We leave Rorik at the next outpost and proceed on foot. The mountain passes are the only way to lose Valerius's aerial scouts." As Kaelen was outlining the escape route, the chain of binding suddenly jolted, not with Seraphina's internal turmoil, but with a terrifying, external vibration. Thump, thump, thump. It was the distinctive heavy sound of vampire aerial patrols, fast-moving, magically enhanced flyers used by the Citadel for long-range reconnaissance. "They're close," Kaelen warned, throwing the map down. "They shouldn't have been able to track us this fast." Seraphina's expression hardened. "They are not tracking my scent or my magic, Kaelen. Valerius is using my own fear. He knows where I am most vulnerable." She quickly pulled back the carriage's rough canvas curtain and stared out into the cold, desolate terrain. The aerial patrols were visible now, 3 dark, winged shapes circling high above, their shadows momentarily falling over the carriage. "They won't attack Rorik, they only want us," Kaelen assessed. "We have to abandon the transport. Now." He slammed on the carriage ceiling, yelling, "Rorik! Stop the carriage. We pay you double for the confusion." Rorik immediately reined in the horses. Kaelen threw open the door and shoved Seraphina out onto the hard, frozen ground. "Run. Follow me." Kaelen led her off the road and into a deep, frozen ravine, his hunter's instincts taking over. They ran, scrambling over the rocky slopes, using the dense shadows of the ravine to hide them from the patrols circling above. As they ran, the chain began to pulse with increasing violence, overwhelming Kaelen's senses. He felt a sudden, suffocating panic, a primal, deep-seated terror that wasn't his own. The cold, the darkness, the trap. Kaelen stumbled, momentarily blinded by the sheer force of Seraphina's psychic turmoil. He grabbed her arm, forcing her to stop. "Seraphina. What is it? That fear? It's not the curse." Seraphina's breath came in ragged gasps. Her eyes were wide, not with predatory hunger but with uncontrolled human terror. "The ravine? It reminds me of the crypt," she choked out. "The first king, when he sealed the curse, he used the cold, the isolation to amplify the terror. Valerius knows the history. He's trying to trigger a mental collapse." The fear Kaelen felt through the chain was her memory, the image of a young queen, chained and terrified, in the place where her ancestor sealed his fate. It was a profound glimpse into Seraphina's deeply buried humanity, the part she desperately tried to conceal with her regal facade. Kaelen knew he had to break the psychic trigger. He spun her around, forcing her to look him in the eye, his hands firm on her shoulders. "Look at me, Seraphina. Look at the chain. You are not chained in the crypt. You are here with me. I promise to protect you from yourself, and I will not let Valerius break your mind." He focused his immense willpower, the disciplined resolve of the Hunter of the Dawn, and channeled it through the chain of binding. He didn't try to stop her fear. He tried to share his resolve, the cold, unyielding commitment to their pact. The silver chain on their chests flared a brilliant white. The rush of terror hitting Kaelen's mind was instantly met with a wall of steel determination. Seraphina gasped, the raw panic draining from her face. Her breathing slowed. She was still afraid, but the fear was now controlled, compartmentalized. I heard your thought," she whispered, shaking her head. "Your resolve. It shielded me. It's the point of the vow," Kaelen said, his own heart pounding heavily from the psychic battle. We're connected. Use that connection. Focus on my control. Not his fear. He scanned the sky. The patrol flyers were circling lower, their pilots sensing their position. We move now, Kaelen instructed. The mountain pass is our only chance to shake them. They continued their desperate ascent, the cold, jagged rocks tearing at Kaelen's boots. As they climbed, Seraphina suddenly pointed. Up ahead, she hissed. The pass is guarded. Not by Valerius. By your sentinels. Standing silhouetted against the dark mountain ridge were 3 armed human sentinels, Elias's patrols. They were waiting, clearly expecting Kaelen to attempt an escape through this bottleneck. Kaelen realized the grim truth. Valerius had tipped off Elias's council. The vampire lord wasn't just hunting Seraphina. He was actively collaborating with the human authorities to ensure Kaelen, the only one protecting the queen, was taken out of the picture. Valerius is clever, Kaelen admitted, drawing his energy blades. He's using my own people as his front line. Your promise just became far more difficult to keep, Hunter, Seraphina observed, her voice now calm, all fear replaced by strategic calculation. My promise is absolute, Kaelen reiterated, his resolve cold and hard. We are not turning back. We go through them. The wind howled through the narrow mountain pass, carrying the scent of frost and danger. Kaelen, Thorne and Queen Seraphina stood at the bottom of the ridge, facing 3 armed human sentinels. Faces he had once shared barracks with, now enemies ordered to capture or kill him. Kaelen, Thorne. Surrender immediately. The command rang out, amplified by the sentinel captain's helmet mic. You are apprehended under charges of high treason and aiding a Class 1 hostile entity. Drop your weapons. Kaelen raised his hands slightly, his energy blades still concealed. He knew these men. They were disciplined and deadly. Attacking them was unthinkable, but surrendering was handing Seraphina straight to Valerius. Captain Rylan, Kaelen called out, recognizing the lead sentinel's voice. I am under an oath to protect the stability of the realm. Valerius is making a move. He's using you. Silence, traitor. Rylan retorted. The Queen's madness is Valerius's opportunity? We don't care about vampire politics. We care that you are running with the bloodsucker. Take the shot. A high-pitched whine signaled the charging of the sentinel's stun rifles. Kaelen had mere seconds. He shoved Seraphina behind a jagged outcrop of rock. Stay down. No magic. Kaelen didn't draw his blades. Instead, he pulled 3 specialized EMP grenades, designed to disrupt vampire technology, and hurled them high up the slope. The grenades burst in rapid succession, not with fire, but with a silent, invisible electromagnetic pulse. The Sentinel's sophisticated communication gear, thermal visors, and targeting systems immediately shorted out, plunging them into sudden, functional darkness. Hold fire. Visors down. Rylan roared, momentarily disoriented. Kaelen seized the opening, sprinting toward a dense thicket of stunted, icy pines that offered cover. He needed to get past them without engaging in lethal combat. As he ran, Seraphina appeared beside him, moving with the same silent, focused intensity. The chain of binding was pulled taut between them, acting as their physical and mental anchor. They will regain their bearings, Hunter, Seraphina hissed. Your methods are too gentle. They are my former colleagues. Kaelen snapped back. I won't kill my own people for your throne, Seraphina. Then let me assist your conscience, she said, her eyes blazing with calculation. As they reached the base of the thicket, Kaelen prepared to leap. But Seraphina stopped, suddenly reaching out and touching the ground with her hand. She didn't use visible magic. Instead, through the psychic link, Kaelen felt a cold, ancient command, a subtle manipulation of the earth itself. The moisture trapped in the granite soil instantly froze, creating an invisible, treacherous sheet of ice directly where the sentinels would follow. They won't see it until they commit, Seraphina murmured, her breath condensing in the cold air. Just as the sentinels began their cautious descent, relying on instinct without their technology, they hit the unexpected ice patch. Rylan and his men yelled in surprise and pain as they lost footing, their heavy armor turning into a liability. Rifles clattered uselessly on the rocks. Go! Seraphina commanded. Kaelen didn't question her. He vaulted over the thicket, Seraphina following effortlessly. They scrambled up the remaining slope, leaving the cursing, bruised sentinels scrambling on the ice below. They reached the summit of the pass, a desolate, wind-scoured plateau. Below them, the northern waste stretched out toward the distant, jagged peaks where the crypt of the First Light was hidden. Kaelen leaned against a rock, catching his breath. He looked back at the pass, feeling the sting of Ryland's betrayal and the cold reality of his new life. You risked your control, Kaelen accused, staring at Seraphina. That use of power, it's dangerous. It was controlled manipulation, not the curse, Seraphina corrected, examining her fingertips which were faintly coated in frost. I used the environment, not a living entity. And I protected your moral code, Hunter. Now you owe me. Kaelen didn't reply, but the tension in the chain of binding confirmed her assertion. Her actions had been purely defensive, tactical, and incredibly effective. Their alliance, cemented by the shared sacrifice in the vault, was evolving into a genuine, albeit perilous, partnership. Valerius is hunting us with his flyers, and Elias's people are hunting us on the ground, Kaelen summarized, looking at the map. We have to go off-grid even for the arcane. No more roads. We head straight through the Perdition Peaks. The peaks are rumored to house ancient, uncontrolled magic, Seraphina warned, a rare note of genuine caution in her voice. The spells Valerius is using to track me could be amplified there. Then we will use the mountains to destroy his tracking spells, Kaelen stated firmly. We move at night. We sleep during the day. Do you need blood? The question hung heavy in the air. This was the most vulnerable point of their alliance. Seraphina hadn't fed since the Citadel. Seraphina hesitated. Kaelen felt the low, burning hum of the Sanguine Curse in the chain. It was hungry but not yet dominant. The elixir I took in the Citadel will hold for another day, Seraphina finally replied. But the strain of suppressing the curse requires immense energy. I am running low. If we do not find the crypt soon, Kaelen, your promise will become impossible to keep. She looked at the small vial of her own blood essence that Kaelen kept tucked safely in his tunic pocket, the tool of his final duty. We must reach the crypt before the next moon cycle, Seraphina commanded, turning toward the towering, snow-capped peaks. There we break the curse. Or I break. They continued their climb, a silent, desperate ascent into the dangerous mountains. The hunter and the queen, bound by silver and blood, their future hinging on a race against time, an ambitious usurper, and the monster hidden within the Protector's charge. The Perdition Peaks lived up to their name. The mountains were a desolate maze of slick ice and razor-sharp rock, untouched by civilization and pulsing with erratic pockets of uncontrolled arcane energy. This chaos made it impossible for Valerius's tracking spells to pinpoint Seraphina, but it also amplified the constant, agonizing tug of the Sanguine Curse in her blood. They had been climbing for hours, moving in the shadow of the sheer cliffs. The disguise of dark garments did little to mask the extraordinary effort required. Kaelen, despite his hunter training, was weary. Seraphina, however, was struggling with something far more profound than fatigue. The chain of binding was glowing intermittently beneath Kaelen's tunic, a visible sign of the internal battle raging within the queen. The psychic link was a confusing mix of cold determination and a raw, burning hunger. They found a shallow rock cave for a brief rest before attempting the final ascent. Kaelen immediately checked the entrance, setting a low-power seismic alarm. Seraphina collapsed onto a patch of dry earth, pulling her thin cloak tight. Her eyes were fixed on the black, stormy sky visible from the cave entrance. The curse is fighting the suppression, she whispered, her voice strained. The ambient magic of these peaks, it fuels the hunger. Kaelen knelt beside her, pulling out his last few nutrient vials, liquid energy meant for emergency human use. Eat these. It's not blood, but it might distract the craving. Seraphina recoiled with a hiss. They are repulsive. That metallic, synthetic taste offers no satiation. It only amplifies the need. She looked at Kaelen, and for the first time, her gaze was not that of a queen to her protector, but that of a predator to its prey. Her eyes flickered dangerously crimson, and Kaelen felt a rush of adrenaline, the familiar, primal warning system of a hunter facing a lethal threat. Stop it, Seraphina, Kaelen commanded, his voice firm and low. Focus on the chain. Focus on the vow. The vow is a shackle, Kaelen, she breathed, her lips parting to reveal the faintest hint of elongated canine teeth. And shackles break when the pressure becomes too great. She lunged, not with full force, but with a terrifying, agonizingly slow stealth, driven by the purest form of the curse, uncontrollable thirst. Kaelen didn't draw his blades. He couldn't. This was the moment his promise was truly tested. He had to protect her from herself. He grabbed her wrists, his gauntlets grinding against her skin. He forced her hands away from his throat and shoved his chest directly against hers. The chain of binding was sandwiched between their bodies, amplifying the psychic link to its maximum intensity. The moment the chain touched both of them with such force, a powerful wave of psychic feedback erupted. Kaelen felt the full, overwhelming rush of the curse's hunger, a cold, consuming void that promised oblivion and power. But Seraphina felt something far more jarring, the raw, undeniable force of Kaelen's resolve channeled directly into her mind. She felt his physical strength, yes, but also the deep-seated loneliness and unwavering sense of duty that defined his life. She saw the memory of Elias's rejection, the burning pain of betrayal, and yet the absolute commitment to the promise made to her, the enemy. The force of the shared, conflicting emotions, her terrifying need versus his iron will, was too much. Seraphina cried out, a sound of agony and frustration, and collapsed, slumping against Kaelen's chest. "I promised," Kaelen repeated, his breath ragged, holding her tightly. "I promised to protect you, even from yourself. I will not break." Seraphina was trembling violently, her head pressed against the chain. "It is agony, Kaelen," she whispered, the crimson fading from her eyes. "To be this close, to feel your steady pulse, and know that Valerius wins if I falter." This vulnerable moment, the hunter holding the queen, their bond fueled by conflicting emotions and bound by a magical chain, was their most intimate yet. The physical proximity was undeniable, but the emotional truth was far more potent. They were two damaged souls relying on an impossible vow. Kaelen realized the danger was no longer just the curse. It was the unspoken attraction that was blurring the lines of their duty. He was supposed to be a tool, a necessary shield, yet he felt a growing, desperate need to see her safe, not just for the realm's sake but for hers. He gently released her, moving back to his side of the small cave. "We have to keep moving. The crypt is close. We can't afford another moment like this." Seraphina nodded, her eyes downcast. She pulled her cloak around her, the cold, regal distance instantly returning, a defense mechanism against the terrifying intimacy they had just shared. Kaelen checked his seismic alarm. It was silent. He then used his long-range comms, a highly encrypted low-frequency channel, to scan for any signs of Elias's patrols or Valerius's scouts. Nothing. The peaks were doing their job. "The last leg of the ascent is the most treacherous," Kaelen said, consulting his map. "The crypt is carved into the central peak. There's a hidden entrance, but it requires a Volkov blood signature to open." Seraphina stood up, regaining her composure. "Then we are close to the end of your duty, Kaelen Thorne. And closer to the final decision." She looked at the small vial of her essence Kaelen held. The message was clear. If they failed to break the curse, Kaelen must fulfill his final promise. "Lead the way, Protector," Seraphina said, her voice steady and cold once more. "Let us face the crypt." They left the cave and began the final, steep climb, the silent pressure of the chain pulling them forward, a testament to the fact that their survival and their destiny were now irrevocably linked. The crypt of the First Light was not a tomb, but a gargantuan, forgotten temple carved deep into the glacial heart of the Perdition Peaks. Its entrance was a sheer, ice-covered arch, hidden behind a curtain of perpetually falling snow. The air here was thin, sharp, and humming with concentrated ancient magic. Kaelen and Seraphina reached the archway, exhausted but focused. The chain of binding was cold against Kaelen's skin, its glow muted, mirroring Seraphina's strained control. "This is it," Seraphina breathed, stepping forward. "The heart of the Volkov line. The birthplace of the Sanguine Curse." She pressed her bloodied palm, the one she had cut in the Vault of Kings, against the icy arch. The Volkov blood, still carrying the lingering magic of their shared sacrifice, reacted instantly. The ice cracked, and the ancient stone groaned as the archway slid inward, revealing a dark, spiraling tunnel. "Valerius will have anticipated this destination," Kaelen warned, drawing his energy blades. "He knows the history as well as you do. This entire structure is likely booby-trapped or guarded." "Then we will proceed with calculated speed," Seraphina countered, walking into the darkness with regal defiance. "The true chamber, the altar of the oath, is at the very center. That is where the curse's fail-safe mechanism is located." They moved through the crypt's winding corridors. The walls were etched with millennia-old murals depicting the history of the Volkov line, the first king, his noble quest, and the ritual that created the curse, a desperate measure to ensure his successors ruled with mercy. As they moved deeper, the temperature plummeted, but the psychic pressure increased. The Sanguine Curse here was not just an internal battle. It was a physical force, pressing against Seraphina's mind, urging her to fail. The murals, they confirmed the forgotten law, Seraphina whispered, pointing to a depiction of the first king standing next to his queen. The ruler must share the burden of the throne with a partner of true devotion. If the ruler fails, the curse activates, eventually leading to self-destruction. The failsafe is tied to that bond. They finally reached the altar of the oath, a vast, circular chamber dominated by a black obsidian altar. On the altar rested a single, massive crystalline heart pulsating with dark red light. This was the source of the curse's power. The heart, Seraphina gasped. If we shatter it, the curse dies forever. The failsafe is deactivated. And the price? Kaelen asked, his gaze fixed on the ominous crystal. Seraphina's face was etched with pain. The law demands the energy of the curse be neutralized by a sacrifice of true devotion. Not blood, Kaelen. A vow of absolute, unconditional selflessness. The person making that vow must willingly sacrifice their deepest desire to save the realm. Suddenly the entrance to the chamber slammed shut, trapping them. A cold, mocking voice echoed from the shadows. The price is your life, cousin. Lord Valerius emerged, not alone, but with two master vampire enforcers, powerful ancient warriors loyal only to him. His face was a mask of triumph. You led me straight to the source, Seraphina, Valerius sneered, walking toward the obsidian altar. You were always so tragically predictable. Now I will shatter the crystal heart myself. The curse will be destroyed, and with it, the requirement for a consort. The throne becomes mine by right of succession, uncontested. You destroy the curse, and you become a tyrant unbound by any law. Seraphina shouted, stepping forward. A tyrant who saves the line from a human-loving fool, Valerius hissed. He looked at Kaelen, his eyes burning with malice. And you, Hunter? Your little vow of protection ends here. Did you truly believe a human could share true devotion with the Queen of Night? Kaelen knew Valerius was right. Their bond was one of duty and necessity, not the true devotion required to satisfy the curse's failsafe. The vow is absolute, Kaelen repeated, drawing his energy blades. Even if I die, the chain will resist you, Valerius. You will be punished. Valerius laughed, a cruel, cold sound. I will simply cut the chain, Hunter. And then I will take the power from the crystal heart. The master vampire enforcers surged forward, aiming for Kaelen. The fight was brutal, focused, and overwhelming. Kaelen fought with the desperation of a cornered animal, his blades deflecting the ancient weapons of the powerful vampires. Meanwhile, Valerius reached the altar and placed his hands on the crystalline heart. The crystal pulsed violently. Valerius began to chant, attempting to siphon the curse's power into himself before destroying the core. Seraphina rushed to the altar, attempting to stop him. Valerius threw her back with a casual, massive surge of force. Seraphina slammed into the wall, severely dazed. Kaelen saw his opportunity vanish. The enforcers were too much. Valerius was about to destroy the curse. Kaelen knew what he had to do. He looked at the vial of Seraphina's blood essence in his pocket, the final duty. He couldn't let Valerius gain the power, and he couldn't let Seraphina be corrupted by the curse if Valerius failed. He made a split-second decision. He smashed the vial on the ground. The pure, concentrated Volkov essence instantly vaporized, sending a blinding wave of energy through the room. The effect was twofold. The vaporized essence temporarily paralyzed the two master vampire enforcers, and the energy surge slammed into the chain of binding. The chain flared with its most intense glow yet. Kaelen felt the agonizing psychic feedback, but this time Seraphina felt something different. Valerius was distracted by the enforcer's paralysis. Seraphina, recovering from the impact, saw Kaelen kneeling, struggling to breathe, having just sacrificed the only thing that could save his own life, the tool of his final escape. In that moment of shared, self-inflicted sacrifice, Seraphina realized the truth. Kaelen's promise was not about duty. He had willingly given up his freedom and his ultimate safeguard to ensure the realm's stability and her life. That was true devotion. Seraphina didn't hesitate. She threw herself onto the altar, embracing the crystalline heart just as Valerius recovered and lunged to shatter it. Kaelen's sacrifice is the vow. Seraphina screamed, focusing every ounce of her remaining willpower. My deepest desire is to be free of the monster within. I swear to use my remaining power only for the protection of the people. I vow absolute selflessness. The chain of binding between them erupted, transforming the orange light of duty into the blazing gold of true devotion. The golden energy channeled Kaelen's sacrificial act, the ultimate proof of his promise, into the curse's core. The crystalline heart didn't shatter. Instead, it imploded with a violent, final burst of golden light, neutralizing the dark magic. The chamber fell into profound silence. Valerius shrieked in disbelief and agony as the immense power he craved dissolved into nothingness. The two enforcers crumbled to dust. Kaelen looked up. Seraphina stood over the altar, weak and trembling. Her eyes were no longer crimson, but a clear, beautiful emerald green, the original color of the Volkov line, untainted by the curse. The chain of binding was no longer pulsing. It was simply gold, a beautiful, permanent testament to their unbreakable vow. "The curse is broken," Seraphina whispered, her voice weak but clear. "And you, Protector, have fulfilled your promise." A deep, unnatural silence descended upon the altar of the oath. The crystalline heart, the centuries-old source of the Sanguine Curse, was gone, reduced to a dusting of golden motes. Lord Valerius was on his knees, his face twisted in disbelief, his power diminished by the shockwave. The two master enforcers were nothing but dust. Seraphina stood tall, utterly spent but completely transformed. Her eyes, once prone to the terrible crimson of the curse, were now a luminous, stable emerald green. The dark power was replaced by a serene, controlled strength. Kaelen struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on the altar. The psychic agony from the chain's final transmutation had been immense, but it was receding, leaving behind a feeling of profound, quiet exhaustion. The chain of binding was no longer silver. It rested on his chest as a link of solid, radiant gold, a permanent symbol of the true devotion that saved them. Valerius looked up, his eyes burning with impotent rage. You shattered it. You destroyed the Volkov legacy for a human's pathetic sacrifice." "The legacy was mercy, cousin, not madness," Seraphina countered, her voice resonating with her renewed authority. "The curse failed because I found a protector who valued the realm's peace more than his own life. You sought power, I sought salvation. The ancient law is fulfilled." She lifted her hand and the golden chain pulsed faintly. Valerius instantly recoiled, clutching his head. "The bond remains," Kaelen realized, his voice weak. "The chain isn't gone. It's transformed. It binds your authority to the virtue of our vow, Valerius. If you try to usurp the throne without my consent, the chain will enact punishment." Valerius, completely defeated and terrified by the magical link, scrambles to his feet and flees, vanishing into the crypt's shadowed corridors. "He is neutralized for now," Seraphina said, turning to Kaelen, her expression complex, a mixture of deep gratitude and cold reality. "But he is not defeated. He will return to the Citadel and spin a story of my madness and his temporary defeat. We must follow immediately." Kaelen nodded, though every muscle screamed in protest. "My sacrifice was not just for the curse, Seraphina. It was to ensure a stable queen. Now we have to clear my name. The Council of the Dawn still believes I am a traitor and that you are an unstable tyrant." Seraphina gently touched the golden chain resting on his chest. "I will not rule as long as my protector is branded a criminal. We go back, Kaelen. Together." They made the long, arduous journey back down the peaks and across the wastes. Their relationship had fundamentally changed. Seraphina was no longer fighting the beast within. She was embracing her role as a ruler defined by empathy and sacrifice, the very qualities Kaelen had demonstrated. Kaelen, in turn, was fiercely loyal, his original sense of duty replaced by a genuine desire to see her rule succeed. They bypassed Etham, taking a different, safer route to avoid the human sentinels, traveling quickly and silently. They reached the outskirts of Viridia, the capital city, just as darkness fell. Seraphina's disguise was long gone. Her silver-white hair, now free of the temporary sealant, flowed around her like a luminous banner. Her emerald eyes glowed with queenly power. "The Citadel is under Valerius's control," Seraphina stated, surveying the city from a high vantage point. "He will have sealed all entrances and prepared his forces. He needs to stage a public coronation to legitimize his claim. He needs to convince the other vampire houses that you are mad, and the humans that you are a menace," Kaelen observed. "Where will he stage his play?" "The Grand Ball," Seraphina said, a cold certainty in her voice. "It is the traditional place for the Volkov line to present the next ruler or consort to the ancient houses. He will hold it tonight. He will be attempting to secure the final pledges of loyalty. Then we crash the party," Kaelen decided, checking his remaining gear. He was battered, running on fumes, and a wanted man. "We use the same ventilation shafts we used to escape. We enter the Citadel through the secret tunnels." Seraphina stopped him, placing a hand on his heavily armored shoulder. "No. Valerius will expect an infiltration. We must use my authority." She looked at him, her emerald eyes intense. You enter the citadel publicly, Kaelen. As a prisoner. Kaelen frowned. That's suicide. They'll take my gear and lock me away. It is necessary, Seraphina insisted. Valerius needs to silence you and parade his power. He will want to use you as a centerpiece in his narrative, the captured traitor, who aided the Mad Queen. But he needs to bring you before the houses, not simply execute you. She paused, allowing the gravity of the plan to sink in. You allow yourself to be captured and brought to the grand ball. Meanwhile, I will use a different, highly secure route to enter the chamber from above. You will be the distraction. When I reveal myself, you will be in the position to provide testimony. The plan was audacious, dangerous, and hinged entirely on Valerius's arrogance. And what about the human council? Kaelen asked. If they catch me before Valerius's guards do, I'll be executed before sunset. The risk is unavoidable, Seraphina conceded. But you have the golden chain, Kaelen. It is the living proof of the vow. You are no longer just a hunter. You are the protector of the Volkov throne. We must rely on that truth to break Valerius's narrative. Kaelen looked down at the golden chain. It was their only piece of evidence, a magnificent, magical burden. Fine, Kaelen sighed, accepting the terrifying risk. I'll give him his traitor. Just promise me you won't be late for the show, Your Majesty. Seraphina gave him a rare, genuine smile, a smile free of the curse's shadow. A queen is never late, protector. She simply arrives when the performance requires her presence. They parted ways. Kaelen turned towards the city's main gates, willingly walking into the hands of his enemies, the golden chain his only proof of an impossible truth. Part 3 had begun. Kaelen Thorne walked into the opulent snare of the Volkov citadel willingly, his heart hammering not with fear, but with calculated tension. He strode onto the main causeway just as the sun set, illuminating the massive Gothic spires in a defiant red glow. He was still wearing his damaged, dirt-caked hunter suit, a stark visual contradiction to the glittering vampire guards surrounding the gate. Halt. Identify yourself. A guard captain barked, leveling an arcane rifle. Kaelen stopped, raising his hands slowly. The only movement he made was deliberately letting his tunic fall open, revealing the heavy, radiant golden chain of binding resting against his chest. I am Kaelen Thorne, the human protector, he stated clearly. I am here to fulfill my promise to Queen Seraphina. Take me to Lord Valerius. The sight of the chain, now unmistakable solid gold, shocked the guards into momentary paralysis. They knew the legends of the relic but had never seen it so transformed. The captain quickly recovered, recognizing Kaelen from the wanted posters plastered across the city. Seize the traitor. Bring him to the grand ballroom. His execution will be the centerpiece of the coronation. Kaelen offered no resistance. They ripped his remaining gear off, his energy blades, his comms, his protective helmet, leaving him utterly vulnerable. He was roughly escorted through the citadel, past chambers now gleaming with preparations for the evening's event. The grand ballroom was a sight of terrifying, seductive splendor. Hundreds of high-ranking vampire houses had assembled, ancient nobles, master vampires, and political opportunists, all dressed in their finest, waiting to witness the transition of power. At the far end, raised on a temporary dais, stood the obsidian throne, draped in black and silver banners. And standing before it, radiating cold confidence, was Lord Valerius. Valerius spotted Kaelen immediately. A predatory grin stretched across his face, a perfect mask of triumph. He knew that Kaelen's voluntary surrender meant Seraphina was close, but Kaelen's presence was too valuable to ignore. Ah, the traitor himself. Valerius boomed, his voice amplified by magic, drawing the attention of every noble in the room. Kaelen was forcibly dragged onto the main floor and slammed to his knees directly before the dais. His eyes met Valerius's, and the master vampire's triumph was palpable. Behold, my esteemed colleagues. Valerius announced, gesturing dramatically toward Kaelen. The human who was meant to be my cousin's consort. This creature is the proof of Queen Seraphina's total descent into madness. He began his performance, spinning a magnificent, chilling lie. Seraphina, consumed by the Sanguine Curse, lost her mind and sought to install this human, this hunter, as her king consort, using the chain of binding to enslave him. Valerius declared, stepping closer and wrenching the golden chain from Kaelen's neck. The gold flared, sending a brief, agonizing spike of pain through Kaelen, but Valerius ignored it, holding the chain high. She polluted the sacred Volkov line with this disgusting farce. Valerius continued. I battled her madness in the crypt of the First Light, where she failed to destroy the curse and instead fled, leaving this chained idiot behind. A ripple of shock and disgust spread through the assembly. The visual was powerful. The majestic, golden chain in Valerius's hands, the captured, dirted human kneeling before him. Valerius's lie was perfect. It explained the chain's glow as enslavement and Kaelen's presence as Seraphina's ultimate failure. Valerius looked down at Kaelen, his eyes narrowed in contempt. And now, Hunter, you will provide the final, public testament to her insanity. Tell them. Tell them that Seraphina Volkov is a madwoman who forfeited her crown. Kaelen struggled against the guards, but he was powerless. He had to stall. He had to buy Seraphina time. She is not mad, Kaelen choked out, his voice hoarse. She broke the curse, Valerius. The chain is gold because the vow was fulfilled. True devotion was. Valerius didn't let him finish. He slammed the golden chain back onto Kaelen's neck with brutal force. Silence. The madwoman speaks through him. Bind his mouth. As the guards moved to muzzle Kaelen, a sudden, powerful tremor rocked the entire citadel. The opulent chandeliers above them swayed violently, and the enormous, ancient doors of the grand ballroom slammed shut. What is this? Valerius demanded, his composure finally cracking. Through the psychic link of the golden chain, Kaelen felt a powerful, stabilizing presence. It wasn't Seraphina's fear or her hunger. It was pure, controlled queenly authority, the same strength he had felt after the curse was broken. I told you, Protector, her thought echoed clearly in his mind. A queen is never late. A shimmering crack appeared high up in the ceiling of the grand ballroom, directly above the obsidian throne. The ceiling was protected by centuries of defensive spells, yet the crack widened rapidly, spilling dust and glittering shards of arcane light onto the floor. From the fissure, descending slowly on a wire of pure, controlled dark energy, was Queen Seraphina Volkov. She was no longer wearing the common traveler's clothes. She was clad in a dress of deep, crimson silk, a direct, challenging reversal of the Queen of Night aesthetic. Her silver-white hair flowed like a waterfall, and her emerald eyes, clear and blazing with newfound power, fixed instantly on Valerius. She landed lightly on the dais right next to the obsidian throne. The only madness here, cousin, Seraphina's voice rang out, cold and clear, silencing every soul in the vast room, is your arrogance. She looked down at Kaelen, kneeling and bound below her. She extended her hand, and with a silent, powerful command, the shackles binding Kaelen's hands and legs shattered. The stage was set. The queen had arrived to save her protector and reclaim her throne. The silence in the grand ballroom was absolute, heavy with shattered ambition and sudden awe. All eyes were fixed on Queen Seraphina, who stood defiant and magnificent on the dais, a vision in crimson, right next to the obsidian throne. Below her, the broken shackles clattered to the floor, symbolizing Kaelen Thorne's immediate, magical freedom. Lord Valerius's face was a contorted mask of pure, venomous shock. He had prepared for a fugitive, perhaps a desperate assassin, but not for a queen radiating such stable, untainted power. Impossible. Valerius shrieked, his voice losing its amplified resonance. You were consumed. You were lost to the curse. I was saved, cousin, Seraphina corrected, her emerald eyes piercing him. Her voice, though not magically amplified, carried the weight of ancient authority. Saved by the true devotion you claim does not exist. The curse is broken, Valerius. The ancient law is fulfilled. She stepped forward, gesturing to Kaelen, who was slowly rising from the floor, bruised but resolute. Behold the man you called a toy and a traitor. This is Kaelen Thorne, the protector whose unwavering promise broke the Sanguine Curse forever. Seraphina reached for the golden chain resting on Kaelen's neck. As her fingers touched the gold, it flared with a brilliant, golden light, momentarily illuminating the shocked faces of the assembled houses. The chain of binding, Seraphina announced, holding the medallion up for all to see. It was silver when bound by duty. It is gold now, forged by the sacrifice of his deepest desire, the desire to remain a free man, untainted by our politics. He risked death to save this throne from the monster I feared becoming. Valerius, recovering his composure, resorted to his final strategic weapon, doubt. What? He roared, pointing at Kaelen. A human's testimony is worthless. He is an enemy of the houses, a criminal wanted by the human government. His life is meaningless, his words are poisoned by his association with her madness. The crowd murmured. Valerius had hit a nerve. Kaelen was indeed a wanted man in the human realm. Seraphina waited for the sound to die down, then looked directly at Kaelen. Protector, you are a hunter of the dawn. Is your sworn enemy, Elias, aware of your current predicament? Kaelen knew this was his final, terrifying chance to clear his name, not just for himself, but for Seraphina's credibility. Elias and the Council of the Dawn branded me a traitor and ordered my execution, Kaelen stated, his voice clear and ringing in the vast hall. They were informed of my intentions by an anonymous tip, a tip designed to ensure I was captured and silenced. He locked eyes with Valerius. You provided that tip, Valerius. You tried to use the human council to dispose of me, precisely because I held the truth of Seraphina's sanity. You are willing to collaborate with the enemy of the vampire realm simply to seize power. The accusation hit the assembly like a thunderbolt. Collaborating with human hunters was the highest form of treason in the vampire world. Valerius staggered, momentarily speechless. He turned to the two most powerful house leaders in the room, ancient vampires whose allegiance was still undecided. Do not believe this human's poison. His words are designed to save his mistress. I speak for stability. The stability you seek is built on lies, Seraphina interjected, stepping forward. I have no need for a consort now that the curse is broken, yet the golden chain remains, a testament to a vow that is no longer necessary but is now permanent. Kaelen Thorne is bound to this throne not by my will, but by his own selflessness. He is the proof of the integrity of my reign. She then played her final, devastating card. Furthermore, Seraphina declared, her voice cold with finality, while Valerius was busy trying to frame me, I discovered the truth of the Sanguine Curse's genesis in the crypt. The curse was tied to the Volkov blood vaults, specifically the hoard of the First King's gold, which Valerius has been secretly depleting for years to fund his private army and his assassination attempts. The accusation shifted the focus from her sanity to Valerius's corruption and criminal intent. The moment she spoke of the hoard, a powerful ripple of dismay went through the assembled houses. Valerius's face went white. The hoard was the financial foundation of the Volkov realm. The theft was undeniable treason. Guards, seize her. Valerius shrieked, desperate. She is lying. But no one moved. The combined weight of the golden chain, Kaelen's credible testimony, and the accusation of the stolen hoard was too much. The houses looked at Valerius, the enraged, unstable usurper, and then at Seraphina, the powerful, clear-eyed queen. Seraphina raised her hand. A faint, focused wave of arcane energy radiated from her, not the destructive force of the curse, but the absolute, rightful power of the queen. Lord Valerius Volkov, Seraphina decreed, her voice ringing with judgment. By the law of the ancestors, I find you guilty of high treason, theft of the royal hoard, and conspiracy to commit regicide. Valerius lunged, driven by a final, insane burst of fury, aiming for Seraphina's throat. Kaelen moved faster. Though unarmed, he intercepted the attack with a perfectly executed hunter maneuver. He slammed his armored shoulder into Valerius's side, throwing the master vampire off balance. Seraphina finished the judgment. The penalty is exile and dissolution. As Valerius crashed to the floor, Seraphina unleashed a precise, powerful surge of Volkov magic. It didn't kill him, but it targeted his very essence, stripping him of his master vampire power, reducing him to a pale, frightened shadow of his former self. Valerius screamed, his power draining away. His ambition was reduced to dust. Seraphina's guards, who had only been waiting for a decisive moment of authority, quickly moved in and dragged the weakened, whimpering Valerius away. Silence returned to the ballroom. Seraphina turned to the assembled houses. The Volkov line is stable. The curse is broken. The throne is occupied by its rightful queen. She looked at Kaelen, still standing by her side, battered but victorious. She placed her hand on the obsidian throne, and the entire citadel seemed to sigh in submission. Queen Seraphina Volkov had returned. The immediate aftermath of the grand ballroom confrontation was a whirlwind of activity. Queen Seraphina issued swift, decisive orders, ensuring Valerius was securely exiled and the loyalties of the remaining houses were cemented. The citadel, hours earlier poised for a coup, now hummed with the focused energy of a stable court. Kaelen Thorne, though physically exhausted, remained on the dais, an imposing figure in his battle-scarred hunter suit. He stood by Seraphina's side, the golden chain a blazing testament to his new, permanent role. He was no longer just the protector. He was the de facto consort, bound by true devotion. Seraphina finally turned to him, the emerald light in her eyes softening from royal decree to a profound, personal gratitude. You saved everything, Kaelen, she whispered, reaching out to gently touch his cheek. The kingdom and my soul. The intimacy of the moment, surrounded by the highest echelons of the vampire world, was terrifying. Kaelen captured her hand, his thumb brushing against her cool skin. The promise is fulfilled, Seraphina, Kaelen replied, his voice low. The curse is broken. You are stable. My duty to the vow is complete. But the meaning of true devotion had changed the nature of that duty. It was no longer a temporary contract. It was a permanent bond of the soul. A sudden commotion at the ballroom entrance cut their moment short. A high-ranking vampire sentinel approached, looking deeply uncomfortable. Your Majesty, the main gate is surrounded, the sentinel reported. Human sentinels from the Council of the Dawn. Their leader, Elias, demands an audience. They state their target is the fugitive, Kaelen Thorne. Kaelen felt the blood drain from his face. He had defeated Valerius, but he couldn't escape the consequences of his actions in the human realm. Elias, Kaelen muttered, the name tasting like ash. He is here to claim the traitor. Seraphina's regal bearing returned instantly. She was no longer just dealing with internal politics. She was facing a dangerous international incident. I will not surrender my protector, Seraphina stated, her voice icy. But a frontal attack would shatter the fragile peace between our realms. She looked at Kaelen. This is your battle, Kaelen. You must clear your name in their eyes. I will ensure your safety inside the Citadel, but you must negotiate your freedom. The meeting was held in the Citadel's War Council chamber, a neutral ground filled with tension. Seraphina sat on a simple ancient chair of authority, flanked by two loyal master vampires. Across a vast obsidian table sat Elias, the Human Council's leader, accompanied by two hardened sentinels, including Captain Rylan, who glared at Kaelen with cold fury. Elias was stone-faced, his eyes reflecting immense disappointment and betrayal. You have committed the highest treason, Kaelen, Elias began, his voice flat. You aided the Vampire Queen, violated your oath to the Dawn, and attacked our patrols. We demand your immediate release into council custody for trial and execution. My actions were a necessary evil to ensure stability, Kaelen countered, standing beside Seraphina. He pointed to the golden chain. This chain is proof, Elias. It was silver, a vow of duty. It is now gold, a vow of true devotion that saved the Volkov line from total collapse. A trinket? Rylan scoffed. A fancy new shackle for a human puppet. Seraphina intervened, her presence a silent, powerful threat. Do not mistake the chain, Captain. Kaelen's vow prevented the Sanguine Curse from driving me to madness. Had I fallen, the resulting chaos would have consumed your cities. He saved the realm, human and vampire alike. He saved his mistress, Elias stated bitterly. And in doing so he betrayed his people. Our intelligence shows that Lord Valerius was defeated tonight. If you are stable, Queen, then the threat is over. Kaelen Thorne is no longer needed. We demand justice for his crimes. The negotiation reached a deadlock. Kaelen was a criminal in the human world and an indispensable ally in the vampire world. Kaelen knew the only way to break the tension was to address Elias's heart, not his logic. I know I betrayed your trust, Elias, Kaelen said quietly, stepping forward. But I did not betray the core mission, protecting the innocent. Valerius conspired with human agents, your own agents, to frame me and guarantee his coup would destabilize the border. He was the true threat to the peace we built. Elias wavered, his stern gaze dropping slightly. The idea of Valerius using human agents to advance his own aims was a frightening thought, exposing the council to its own security breaches. Seraphina seized the momentary leverage. The Volkov line is stable. I am issuing a royal decree. Kaelen Thorne is granted permanent diplomatic immunity, serving as the official envoy and protector of the vampire realm to the Human Council. He is under the protection of this throne. She looked directly at Elias. If you try to take him, Elias, you will not be engaging a traitor. You will be declaring war on the unified Volkov houses. Elias looked at the unyielding queen, then at Kaelen, the man he mentored, now bound by gold to his eternal enemy. The cost of war outweighed the satisfaction of revenge. After a long, agonizing pause, Elias nodded slowly. The council accepts the diplomatic immunity under protest. But know this, Thorne, you are not welcome in the human lands. You are a ghost exiled from your past. You belong here with the consequences of your choice. Elias stood up, his gaze cold and final. He walked past Kaelen without another word, leaving him with the crushing weight of his decision. The Human Council was gone, but the price of Kaelen's promise was absolute exile. Kaelen watched them go, the bitter reality settling in. His promise to Seraphina was fulfilled, but his life was now irrevocably bound to the Citadel, a sanctuary he had once sworn to destroy. Seraphina stood and walked to Kaelen, taking his hands in hers. They cannot harm you here, Protector. I know, Kaelen replied, looking around the Gothic chamber. But this is my prison, Seraphina. I am an envoy with no one to send a message to. I am bound by true devotion to a world I don't belong in. Seraphina leaned closer, her emerald eyes filled with a tenderness that defied her ancient status. Then let us build a new world together, Kaelen Thorne. A world where a hunter can be a protector and a queen can finally be free. The tension that had built between them since the moment of their pact, duty, conflict, sacrifice, and now undeniable mutual feeling, finally broke. Seraphina closed the distance, her lips meeting his in a kiss that sealed their political and personal fate. The golden chain pulsed gently, the silent witness to the ultimate consequence of the vow. The grand ballroom had emptied, leaving behind only the cold echoes of Valerius's defeat and the lingering scent of arcane power. Seraphina sat on the obsidian throne, not with the imperious rigidity of the past, but with a quiet, purposeful strength. Kaelen stood beside her, his body battered, but his gaze fixed on the newly crowned queen. The golden chain pulsed gently, a warm, reassuring weight on his neck. It is done, Seraphina murmured, looking down at the magnificent chain. The curse is broken, Valerius is exiled and neutralized, and the houses are subdued. Your promise is fulfilled, Protector. The promise was absolute, Your Majesty, Kaelen replied, exhaustion finally creeping into his voice. But the battle is not over. My former life still considers me a traitor. I am a fugitive, and my association with you, even as your legitimate protector, will be seen as an act of war by the Council of the Dawn. Seraphina rose from the throne, walking over to Kaelen. She lifted her hand and gently touched his bruised cheek. The intimacy, free of the threat of the curse, was tender and real. I will not hide you, Kaelen, Seraphina stated firmly. The time for secrecy is over. The peace of both realms now depends on a new, stable alliance, and you are the living proof of that possibility. She turned to a newly appointed loyal master vampire guard. Send a secure, diplomatic summons. Invite Elias, the leader of the Council of the Dawn, to the Citadel immediately. Inform him that his traitor is in my custody, and an urgent matter of cross-realm security requires his presence. The meeting was set for dawn in a small neutral conference room within the Citadel's diplomatic wing. Elias arrived, flanked by two heavily armed sentinels. His face was a thundercloud of righteous fury and pain, his eyes fixed only on Kaelen. You dare summon me, Seraphina? Elias spat, ignoring the queen's presence and addressing Kaelen. You have corrupted one of our finest. You are a disgrace, Kaelen Thorne. Surrender to your true authority now. Seraphina remained perfectly calm, sitting regally at the head of the polished obsidian table. Kaelen sat beside her, silent, waiting for the queen's cue. You will address me with the respect due to a reigning sovereign, Elias, Seraphina commanded, her voice soft but powerful. And you will listen to your former ally. Elias scoffed, but the sheer force of Seraphina's untainted authority made him pause. Kaelen spoke, his voice clear and resonant. Elias, I was branded a traitor because I refused to execute a sovereign who was actively fighting for control of her sanity. I saved the vampire realm from the tyranny of Lord Valerius, who was using the threat of Seraphina's curse to usurp power and plunge both realms into war. He deliberately exposed the golden chain. Elias's eyes widened at the sight of the transformed relic. This chain is the evidence, Kaelen continued. It proves that the curse is broken, that Seraphina is a stable, rightful ruler, and that my actions were driven by a vow of true devotion to protect the greater peace. The chain is an ancient relic. Its transformation means nothing to the council. Elias argued, though his conviction was wavering. It's a symbol of your enslavement, Kaelen. She controls you. I control nothing but the stability of my rule, Seraphina intervened, rising to face Elias directly. The curse is gone. My need for a consort is gone. The chain remains because Kaelen's vow of selflessness was the sacrifice required to break the curse. It binds his loyalty to the virtue of the throne, not the individual who sits on it. She then delivered the final blow to Elias's narrative. Furthermore, Elias, Seraphina continued, her voice hardening, I have proof that Valerius was in contact with high-ranking individuals within your own council, offering vast amounts of the stolen Volkov gold in exchange for your military aid in disposing of me. Valerius's plan was not to assassinate me himself, but to have your council do his dirty work. She placed several encrypted Volkov data slates on the table, containing irrefutable proof of Valerius's secret transactions with corrupted human council members. Elias stared at the evidence, his expression collapsing from anger to shock and deep, profound shame. He realized that Kaelen hadn't been corrupted. He had been right. His judgment had been clouded by old hatreds, and he had nearly become Valerius's greatest pawn. The council branded you a traitor, Elias whispered, his voice broken. But the corruption ran deeper than we knew. You chose peace over prejudice, Kaelen. You chose duty. He looked at Seraphina, then back at Kaelen, the complexity of the situation overwhelming him. What do you want, Kaelen? Kaelen looked at Seraphina, who gave him a small, encouraging nod. I want the formal charges of high treason dropped, Kaelen stated. I want a return to the human realm to clear the corruption from the council. And I want an official, signed non-aggression pact between the Volkov throne and the Council of the Dawn, mediated and permanently guaranteed by the protector of the throne. He tapped the golden chain. A permanent communication channel between us. I am the bridge, Elias. My life is the guarantee of peace. Elias looked at the evidence, then at the golden chain and finally into Kaelen's unwavering eyes. The truth was undeniable. You are no longer a traitor, Kaelen, Elias conceded, standing tall. You are the mediator. The charges are dropped. The pact will be signed. The peace is guaranteed. The crisis was averted. The charges were dropped. The pact was signed. Kaelen had secured the peace he had risked his life for. He stood with Seraphina in the high tower balcony of the citadel, watching the first true peaceful sunrise over Viridia. You are free now, Kaelen, Seraphina said softly, leaning her head against his armored shoulder. You fulfilled the vow. The chain remains, but you can leave the citadel and return to your life. Kaelen looked at the gold chain, then at the queen whose emerald eyes now reflected the dawn. He felt the constant, low hum of their connection, a connection no longer driven by necessity, but by love and mutual respect. My life is no longer just my own, Seraphina, Kaelen admitted, finally letting his emotional guard down. The vow may be fulfilled, but the true devotion remains. My place is here to ensure the peace I brokered holds. My promise to protect the queen from herself is now a promise to protect the queen's peace. Seraphina smiled, a genuine warm light filling her eyes. Then remain protector. Not as a shackled guard but as my consort of the vow. She reached for his hand, sealing their fate. The hunter who had promised to protect the vampire queen, even from herself, had secured eternal peace, and in doing so had found his forever home by her side. The citadel was quiet. Queen Seraphina's decisive actions had quelled the immediate turmoil, but the process of rooting out Valerius's influence was slow and delicate. Seraphina and Kaelen spent their first few weeks bound by the golden chain, a symbol now of love, trust and mutual authority, immersed in the tedious work of stabilizing the Volkov houses and repairing the damage Valerius had inflicted. Kaelen's role as the consort of the vow was entirely unique. He was not a king nor a traditional consort. He was the mediator and the protector elevated to a position of equal political standing. He used his knowledge of the human realm to help Seraphina negotiate favorable terms with the Council of the Dawn, ensuring the fragile peace pact held fast. One evening, Kaelen found Seraphina in the private library, poring over ancient financial ledgers, the emerald light from her eyes illuminating the dust-covered pages. She looked up, a rare, genuine smile gracing her lips. The Volkov hoard is significantly depleted, Kaelen, she informed him, closing the massive book with a heavy thud. Valerius sold off assets and gold reserves to fund his private army and pay off those corrupted members of your council. The financial stability of the realm is compromised. Financial stability is my problem too now, Kaelen admitted, walking towards her. He reached out and gently traced the line of the golden chain where it rested on her collarbone. The metal was always warm, reflecting their psychic and emotional equilibrium. I need to return to the human realm briefly, Kaelen stated. My name is cleared, but the council still has internal corruption. I must secure the remaining financial records from the corrupted members Valerius dealt with. The gold must be recovered to prove the extent of his treason and restore your economy. Seraphina's smile faded, replaced by a deep worry. The human realm is still dangerous for you, Kaelen. Your former allies may accept your new status, but those who benefited from Valerius's gold will see you as a threat. Precisely why I must go alone, Kaelen reasoned. You are the center of stability here. If Valerius's remaining agents attack the citadel in your absence, the fragile peace will shatter. I will go in and out, silently as I was trained to do. You are no longer a hunter, Seraphina reminded him, her hand gripping the golden chain. You are my consort. Your life is now too valuable to risk on a simple retrieval mission. The tension of their conflicting duties, his need for action, her need for security, was a constant challenge in their new dynamic. My duty is to ensure the Volkov throne is stable, Kaelen insisted, his voice gentle but firm. And that means recovering your assets and eliminating the final traces of Valerius's conspiracy. I will not be reckless. Seraphina yielded, recognizing the absolute necessity of the mission. Very well. But you will take the highest level of protection. Use the cloaking devices from the Royal Armory. And you will not engage in conflict unless absolutely necessary. Your primary mission is retrieval. She walked over to a heavy, iron-bound chest and opened it. Inside, nestled on velvet, were ancient, powerful Volkov artifacts. She retrieved a small obsidian ring carved with the Volkov crest. This is the Ring of Return, Seraphina explained, placing it on Kaelen's finger. It is linked directly to the Citadel's central energy core. If you are in mortal danger, activate it. It will instantly draw you back to this chamber regardless of the distance. It is my failsafe. Kaelen nodded, accepting the protection. He looked at her, his eyes serious. I will be back by the next moon cycle. Valerius's agents are resourceful, but they are scattered. Kaelen entered the human realm the next night, moving through the undercity tunnels, clad in his black hunter-issue undersuit and equipped with Volkov cloaking technology. The familiar routine was a strange comfort after the weeks of intense politics. His target was a safe house belonging to Lord Alistair, the highest-ranking council member who had been exposed as accepting Valerius's gold. Alistair had fled before Elias could arrest him, taking crucial evidence with him. Kaelen infiltrated the abandoned safe house. It was meticulously clean, stripped of anything obvious. He used his sensor kit to find a hidden compartment and retrieved a series of coded data slates and a heavily encrypted ledger. Mission accomplished, Kaelen thought, feeling the familiar relief of a clean job. As he turned to leave, Kaelen felt a sudden, chilling spike through the golden chain. It wasn't Seraphina's anxiety, it was a strong, concentrated external surge of pain aimed at her. Seraphina is under attack. The realization slammed into him. The psychic link was now transmitting her immediate, violent struggle. Valerius. Kaelen didn't hesitate. He activated the Ring of Return on his finger. The obsidian ring flared with blinding white light, and Kaelen felt himself instantly pulled through space and time, rocketing back toward the Citadel. He reappeared in Seraphina's private library, slamming back into the material plane with a rush of icy air. The room was chaos. Seraphina was battling Valerius, who had somehow returned from his exile, his face a mask of insane fury. Valerius was no longer a master vampire, but he was armed with ancient Volkov weapons and fueled by a terrifying, desperate rage. You should have killed me, cousin. Valerius shrieked, swinging a massive, enchanted warhammer. Seraphina, though still powerful, was on the defensive. She fought with pure arcane magic, but the tight confines of the library made her power unwieldy. She was bleeding from a cut on her forehead, and her hair was disheveled. Valerius saw Kaelen reappear. The human slave returns. Perfect. I'll break the chain and then I'll break your heart, Seraphina. Kaelen immediately lunged into the fight, his hunter training and instinct taking over. He pulled his concealed energy blades, hidden in the lining of his suit, and engaged Valerius. This was the final battle. It was no longer about a coup or a curse, it was about the survival of the consort and the queen. The private library, a sanctuary of ancient knowledge, had become the arena for the final, desperate struggle. Kaelen Thorne slammed back into reality, his cloak shimmering and then collapsing, revealing his combat suit. He didn't hesitate. Lord Valerius was focused on Seraphina, swinging the heavy, enchanted warhammer in a wide, destructive arc. You should have stayed buried, cousin. Seraphina shouted, deflecting the blow with a shimmering shield of arcane energy, but the force still threw her back against a bookshelf. Kaelen intercepted the next swing. He met the massive ancient weapon not with brute strength, but with hunter precision. He didn't block the hammer, he sliced at the weapon's haft with his energy blades, aiming for the seams of the enchantment. Chink! The warhammer's metal groaned in protest. Valerius roared, recognizing Kaelen. His rage was now focused entirely on the human who had destroyed his destiny. The protector returns. I'll grind you to dust, human. I'll break that ridiculous golden collar and watch her sanity crumble. Valerius shrieked, lunging at Kaelen with blinding, psychotic speed. Kaelen parried, pushing the master vampire away. Valerius, despite losing his full ancient power, was fueled by an insane, concentrated malice, making him unpredictable and dangerously strong. Seraphina. Focus on defense. Kaelen commanded, ducking under a savage sweep of Valerius's arm. I'll draw his fire. Seraphina, recovering swiftly, understood the tactic. She began weaving intricate, defensive spells, reinforcing the library's magical wards. Valerius's attack was purely physical, and her power was best used to contain the collateral damage. Valerius, desperate to break their golden link, aimed a crushing kick at Kaelen's chest, right where the golden chain rested. Kaelen couldn't dodge in time. The boot slammed into his sternum. The pain was excruciating, but the chain responded instantly. The golden chain flared with a brilliant, self-defensive light, channeling Kaelen's pain and his will through the psychic link. Valerius screamed, not from physical impact, but from the sudden, agonizing psychic feedback that ripped through his mind. The force of the true devotion vow was now actively protecting its source. The gold, it burns. Valerius shrieked, clutching his head and stumbling back. This was the opening Kaelen needed. He recognized Valerius's weakness. His mind, already twisted by ambition, was now completely unstable. He's operating on rage, not logic. Kaelen yelled to Seraphina. We need to expose him to pure reason. Seraphina knew exactly what he meant. She quickly conjured a shimmering, focusing mirror. She didn't direct it at Valerius, she directed it at Kaelen. Use the chain. Seraphina commanded. Show him the truth of his failure. Kaelen, seeing the plan, rushed towards the mirror. He channeled all his concentration, the moment of his sacrifice, the sincerity of his vow, the true devotion that saved the realm, and focused it directly into the golden chain. The chain pulsed with blinding energy. Kaelen positioned himself, using the mirror to reflect the chain's golden, powerful light directly into Valerius's tormented eyes. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. The concentrated energy of the vow of selflessness, the pure antithesis of Valerius's selfish greed, slammed into the master vampire's mind. Valerius cried out, a sound of utter despair. He didn't see the gold, he saw the truth of his pathetic, failed ambition. The moment Seraphina chose a human sacrifice over her own power, making his entire coup futile. He fell to his knees, his sanity finally shattering under the weight of the undeniable reality. I deserve the power, not the human. Valerius wept, his body convulsing in a final, terrible defeat. Seraphina, cold and resolute, finished the execution. She raised her hand, gathering the ambient arcane power of the citadel, the power that now recognized her as its queen. She focused a tight, non-lethal surge directly at the ancient warhammer. The weapon, fueled by Valerius's malice, instantly imploded in a shower of useless sparks and dust. Valerius, now utterly disarmed and broken, was left weeping on the floor, reduced to a traumatized, powerless noble. Take him, Seraphina ordered her guards, who had finally been able to breach the magically warded door. Place him in the deepest, shielded prison. He is no longer a threat. He is merely a relic of a time we have thankfully passed. The library was silent again. Kaelen dropped his energy blades, which retracted back into his suit. He was breathing heavily, his ribs throbbing where Valerius had struck him. Seraphina rushed to him, her face etched with profound relief and concern. She immediately inspected his chest, gently pushing his bruised tunic aside to examine the golden chain. Are you hurt? She whispered, her fingers running over the gold. The chain protected me, Kaelen managed, a faint smile touching his lips. It held fast. And I, protector of the vow, protected the queen. Seraphina leaned in, her forehead touching his. You are more than my protector, Kaelen. You are my consort. The very foundation of my stable reign. The intimate moment was their true, emotional coronation. The hunter had saved the queen not just from her curse, but from the threat of tyranny, solidifying the promise made in the citadel so long ago. They looked at the scattered books and the dented walls, the scars of their journey and their victory. The future was now theirs to build together. The golden chain was no longer a shackle of duty, but the unbreakable link of their forbidden, eternal love. The days following the final battle were a blur of political maneuvering and emotional decompression. Seraphina worked tirelessly, using her untainted authority to solidify her reign. Valerius's scattered agents were quickly rounded up, and the Volkov houses, now fully convinced of Seraphina's stability and Kaelen's unique status, pledged their unwavering loyalty. The golden chain was no longer a topic of debate, it was the symbol of the new Volkov era. Kaelen quickly settled into his role as the consort of the vow. His days were spent in diplomatic chambers, mediating trade agreements, and acting as the primary liaison between the vampire citadel and the human council of the dawn. His presence alone guaranteed that the newly signed peace pact was respected. Yet, his nights were spent in the queen's private chambers, a sacred space where the political boundaries dissolved into personal intimacy. One evening, Kaelen found Seraphina standing before the massive antique mirror, running a hand through her long silver-white hair. She was dressed in a soft, dark robe free of the regal weight of the day's garments. "The balance is precarious, Kaelen," she admitted, meeting his gaze through the mirror. "They accept me, but they still struggle to accept you. An ordinary vampire would have demanded your life for saving mine." Kaelen walked up behind her, gently resting his hands on her shoulders. The golden chain pressed warmly against his chest. "The ordinary vampires don't hold the power now, Your Majesty," Kaelen countered softly. "The houses respect stability and they respect power. You showed them both, and the chain is the physical proof that our bond guarantees the peace they crave." He looked at their reflection, the powerful, pale queen and the dark-haired, armored human, linked by the extraordinary glow of the gold. Seraphina leaned back into his embrace, sighing contentedly. "It is the small things that are difficult. They are accustomed to secrecy, to darkness. I want a reign defined by transparency and mercy, principles you taught me." "Then start small," Kaelen suggested. "Give them a symbol of this new beginning. A public display of your commitment to the human pact." Over the next few weeks, Seraphina implemented changes that sent shockwaves through the conservative vampire realm. She established the Dawn Council, a diplomatic committee composed equally of Volkov nobles and Kaelen's nominated human delegates. She even decreed that the Citadel's high walls be fitted with sections of magically treated glass, allowing controlled amounts of sunlight into the upper chambers, a physical commitment to transparency. While the vampire realm adjusted, Kaelen maintained constant contact with Elias. The Human Council had begun the slow, painful process of internal cleansing, arresting those exposed by Valerius's ledgers. "The process is slow, Kaelen," Elias reported during one of their secure comms calls. "But the pact is holding. Your position as mediator is the only thing stopping the Senate from demanding Seraphina's execution for associating with a traitor. They hate the fact that their peace is guaranteed by a former hunter and a vampire queen." "Peace isn't meant to be easy, Elias," Kaelen responded, looking at the golden chain. "It's meant to be absolute." Despite the political success, Kaelen faced personal isolation within the Citadel. Though the servants were courteous and the nobles respectful, he was the only human, a mortal man living among ancient, powerful immortals. He missed the easy camaraderie of the hunter barracks and the simple familiarity of the human world. Seraphina noticed his subtle withdrawal. She had saved her kingdom, but she still had to save her protector from the loneliness of his sacrifice. One evening, Seraphina surprised Kaelen in his study, not with political documents, but with a small, handcrafted box. "You gave up everything for this throne, Kaelen," Seraphina said, her voice soft. "Your home, your friends, your future. I wish to give you back one thing you lost." Kaelen opened the box. Inside was his original, engraved hunter's medallion, the one he believed was lost forever. "I retrieved it from Valerius's archives," Seraphina explained. "He planned to parade it at your execution." Kaelen ran a calloused finger over the engraving. "It means nothing now. I'm a consort, not a hunter." "You are both," Seraphina insisted, gently touching the golden chain and the medallion. "The hunter made the vow, the consort fulfills it. You are the bridge, Kaelen. Do not forget the ground you stand on." Seraphina then gave him a gift that spoke volumes about their future. She presented Kaelen with a massive, obsidian table, a copy of the treaty table, and scrolls detailing the creation of a private hunter network operating under Kaelen's direct, clandestine command. "The humans need a voice in the Citadel they can trust implicitly," Seraphina explained. "And you need a tangible connection to your world. Use the Volkov resources. Build your own force. Be the king consort of the human voice, Kaelen." Kaelen looked at the queen, understanding the depth of her trust and love. She wasn't just queen of the vampires, she was becoming queen of two realms, and he was her equal partner in that immense task. He secured the golden chain and accepted the medallion. "Then let the work begin, Your Majesty," Kaelen said, his focus renewed. "The peace is secured. Now we build the empire." The Volkov citadel hummed with quiet efficiency under Queen Seraphina's new rule. The magical glass windows in the upper chambers glowed faintly, a physical testament to the new era of transparency. Kaelen spent most of his days in a newly established, highly secure annex, laying the groundwork for his private hunter network, a cross-realm intelligence group loyal only to the Golden Chain. He had successfully recruited a handful of disillusioned former council sentinels and a few neutral vampire scouts, creating a small but effective early warning system. One stormy night, Kaelen was alone in the annex, poring over encrypted logs of Valerius's financial transactions. The ledgers, retrieved from the human realm, showed that Valerius had not only stolen gold but had also invested heavily in a remote, forgotten Volkov laboratory specializing in arcane manipulation. He wasn't just funding a coup, he was funding a fallback. Kaelen realized, the dread settling heavy in his stomach. Just then his security system shrieked, not an external breach but an internal catastrophic failure. The lights flickered and died, plunging the annex into darkness. Seraphina. Kaelen immediately called through the golden chain. The psychic link was usually clear, but now it was filled with a sudden, oppressive static. A strong magical interference designed to jam their connection. Kaelen drew his energy blades. He was trapped. The emergency wards he had installed were failing, and the only exit was sealed. A cold, familiar voice echoed from the shadows of the annex. The human slave is predictable. Always working alone. Lord Valerius emerged, no longer the broken shadow of the crypt, but strangely revitalized and surrounded by a shimmering, unsettling aura of unstable power. He was not alone. Two figures, heavily cloaked and armed with crude, bulky arcane weapons, flanked him. Impossible, Kaelen muttered, recognizing the unstable energy. You've been exiled. Your power was dissolved. Exile only means an opportunity to research, Protector, Valerius sneered, his eyes gleaming with mad triumph. That forgotten laboratory was a treasure. My master enforcers taught me a few things before they crumbled. I may have lost my lineage power, but I gained something better. Arcane amplification. Valerius was using the Forgotten Lab's technology to artificially boost his dissolved power, making him dangerously volatile. Your little golden collar can't save you now, Valerius hissed. The arcane static is focused on the chain, scrambling your connection to the queen. And your new friends? Valerius gestured to the two cloaked figures. They pulled back their hoods, revealing the faces of two of Kaelen's recently recruited former council sentinels. Betrayal runs deep, Hunter, Valerius laughed. I found these disillusioned puppies before you did. I offered them what the Queen's peace could not, revenge against the council that abandoned them and human sovereignty through my rule. The betrayal was a cold, devastating punch. Kaelen realized his attempt to build a loyal network had been sabotaged from the start. Your queen will watch her perfect peace shatter when her trusted human consort is publicly exposed as a traitor to both realms, Valerius promised. The two corrupted sentinels immediately opened fire. They weren't using stun rifles. They were using modified, high-impact human anti-vampire weapons, loaded with explosive silver rounds. Kaelen fought back desperately, using the collapsing bookshelves and tables as cover. The close-quarters battle was chaotic and brutal. He was outnumbered and outgunned, fighting men who knew his every move. One sentinel managed to flank him, firing a shot that grazed Kaelen's side. The silver grazed his combat suit, causing a painful burn. The chain is a trap, Seraphina. Valerius shouted, knowing the magnetic field was slowly draining the jamming static. I'll break the human and I'll break you. Valerius raised a hand, and a massive surge of unstable arcane power slammed into the secure wall that separated Kaelen from the main citadel. The wall groaned, then began to crumble. My final gift, Valerius gloated. I will expose the truth of your reign to the entire citadel, the weak, vulnerable human who guarantees your peace. As the wall collapsed, Seraphina, who had been fighting the jamming static in the main citadel, finally broke through. The golden chain flared with a blinding intensity, momentarily shattering the remaining arcane static. Kaelen felt Seraphina's pure, terrified presence in his mind. Kaelen, I'm coming. But Valerius had anticipated her arrival. He focused his unstable power on a massive structural support beam directly above Kaelen. Too late, Queen. Valerius shrieked. Watch the symbol of your devotion crush. The beam ripped from the ceiling, plunging down onto Kaelen. Kaelen had no time to dodge. He braced himself, accepting the impact. But before the beam hit him, a surge of pure, violent arcane energy erupted from Seraphina's direction. It wasn't the contained, beautiful power of the new queen. It was a wild, desperate, and unstable power, the kind born of pure, protective rage. The energy slammed into the beam, diverting its path by mere inches. The beam didn't hit Kaelen, it crashed next to him, shattering the floor. Seraphina stumbled into the ruined annex, her hair disheveled, her emerald eyes blazing with an uncontrolled, terrible light. The pure force of her anger had temporarily overwhelmed her self-control, releasing the kind of destructive power she had vowed to contain. You will not touch him. Seraphina roared, her voice echoing with ancient, terrifying authority. The two corrupt sentinels, terrified by the sheer force of the Queen's uncontrolled power, froze. Valerius, however, saw his chance. He launched a final massive assault, aiming his amplified arcane energy not at Seraphina, but at the golden chain itself, the symbol of their unbreakable vow. If the chain breaks, the vow fails. And the curse returns, Seraphina. Valerius screamed, unleashing his final blast. The ruined annex was bathed in chaotic, unstable light. Lord Valerius unleashed his final massive surge of artificially amplified arcane power directly at the golden chain. His goal was not to harm Kaelen physically, but to break the vow of true devotion that underpinned Seraphina's reign. Seraphina, fueled by pure, terrifying protective rage, countered with an equal and opposite force. The power she released was raw and uncontrolled, the very instability she had fought so long to suppress. The air thrummed dangerously, threatening to collapse the entire citadel wing. Kaelen knew that if Seraphina continued to fight with this intensity, she would either destroy Valerius and herself, or fracture the fragile peace they had built. The solution lay in the golden chain. Seraphina. Control. Kaelen mentally projected through the fiercely contested link. Don't fight his power. Use the VOW. Kaelen slammed his hands onto the golden chain resting on his chest. He didn't focus on fighting Valerius's attack. He focused on the essence of the vow, the selfless, absolute commitment to her stability and the realm's peace. The golden chain responded instantly. It absorbed Valerius's unstable arcane blast and Seraphina's wild counterforce, acting as a stabilizer and a conduit. The gold flared not with chaos, but with a brilliant, steady white gold light. The light was pure true devotion made manifest. It didn't destroy Valerius's power, it instantly nullified its source by exposing the raw greed and instability that fueled it. Valerius shrieked, his amplified power dissolving into useless sparks. The psychic feedback was excruciating, not just pain but the mental anguish of facing his own selfish failure amplified tenfold. He was reduced to his core, pathetic self. Seraphina's rage instantly subsided. She felt the calm, steady flow of Kaelen's resolve channeled directly into her soul, pulling her back from the edge of instability. The light from the chain reaffirmed their bond, reminding her that she was no longer alone. The two corrupt sentinels who had been frozen by the sight of the unstable power, seized their chance to escape through the newly created hole in the wall. Kaelen ignored them. The priority was Valerius. Valerius, his power gone, collapsed against the shattered wall, weeping uncontrollably. It's not fair. The throne was mine. Kaelen walked toward him, the golden chain radiating cold authority. The throne belongs to stability, Valerius. The vow made it so. Seraphina approached, her voice now steady and imbued with queenly justice. Your final act was to corrupt a vow of peace and try to shatter the only thing that guarantees the future of the Volkov line. You have proven yourself a threat to the stability of both realms. She knew that simply imprisoning Valerius would never be enough. His ambition was a mental illness that would always find a way out. Seraphina raised her hand not to execute him, but to enact a final, terrible judgment that reflected the law of the ancient kings. By the law of the ancestors, which you so desperately tried to manipulate, Seraphina decreed, her voice ringing with finality, you are exiled from the presence of the Volkov line, forever stripped of your name and your essence. You will be sent to the most isolated plane, where your ambition will have no one to corrupt and no one to rule. With a powerful surge of controlled magic, Seraphina opened a deep, black arcane fissure in the floor, a tear in the fabric of reality. It was a doorway to a pocket dimension used for eternal banishment. Valerius looked into the void, his eyes wide with horror, realizing the true finality of his defeat. He was dragged to the edge by Seraphina's loyal guards. With a final choked cry of treason, Valerius was shoved into the fissure, and the doorway snapped shut, leaving no trace. The threat of Lord Valerius was eliminated forever. The citadel was safe. The consort of the vow and the queen stood amidst the rubble of the annex, their bodies bruised but their bond unshakable. Seraphina gently touched the golden chain, then looked at Kaelen, her eyes shining with unshed emotion. You saved me, Kaelen. Again. You were right, the curse is broken but my rage is not. Your rage was protective, Seraphina, Kaelen corrected softly. It was the queen defending her throne and her consort. And the chain will always be the anchor. It stabilized the fight. Kaelen knelt and began searching the rubble for the crucial data slates he had retrieved from the human realm. The corrupt sentinels were gone, but the evidence was still vital to secure the pact. He found the satchel intact with the ledgers safe inside. The two corrupt sentinels escaped, Kaelen noted grimly. They'll report to the remaining corrupted council members. They will try to spin a story of a vampire attack and a human execution. Seraphina nodded, her political instincts instantly returning. Then we counter with the truth. We will use the ledgers to expose the full corruption. We will show the human council that you were not a traitor, but a double agent working to root out their rot. And the two traitors will be proof of the instability Valerius created within your own security, Kaelen added. We expose both sides simultaneously, to force absolute transparency. Their eyes met, no longer queen and protector, but equal partners in governance and love. The future was clear. Their strength lay in their unity and their commitment to shared truth. The atmosphere between the Volkov citadel and the Council of the Dawn was razor-thin. News of the internal citadel battle, spun by the two escaping corrupt sentinels, had reached the human council. The story was simple. Queen Seraphina was unstable, she had executed her own noble, Valerius, and her human consort was a collaborator. Seraphina and Kaelen knew they had to act decisively. They summoned Elias and the 5 most powerful council senators, including the 2 highest-ranking officials implicated in Valerius's ledgers, to an emergency closed-door summit at the Citadel. The setting was a neutral, heavily shielded chamber. Seraphina sat at the head of the long obsidian table, her emerald eyes calm but intense. Kaelen sat beside her, the golden chain visible over his repaired suit, his hand resting on the retrieved data slates. Elias, visibly tense, spoke first. Your Majesty, the Council demands an explanation for the violence. 2 of our sentinels report an unwarranted attack by your forces and they accuse Kaelen of aiding a blood-crazed tyrant. One of the implicated senators, Senator Varys, a man known for his self-righteous posturing, slammed his hand on the table. Kaelen Thorne is a double agent. He is a traitor to humanity. He must be extradited immediately for trial. Seraphina raised a single, calm hand, silencing the room. The trial begins now, Senator Varys. But the defendant is not my consort. Kaelen smoothly slid the retrieved data slates across the table, directly to Elias and the unaffected senators. These are ledgers recovered from the human realm, detailing a widespread conspiracy, Kaelen stated, his voice steady. Lord Valerius was not my ally, he was our mutual enemy. He funded a coup with stolen Volkov gold and was paying off high-ranking members of this council to assassinate the vampire queen and blame it on border tensions. The senators who had not been involved gasped, snatching up the slates. Varys and his ally, however, maintained a facade of outrage. These are forgeries. Varys spluttered, his face pale. Vampire propaganda. You cannot trust the word of a known traitor. Seraphina intervened, her power focusing on Varys. The ledgers detail specific accounts, dates and meeting locations, Senator. Furthermore, the 2 sentinels who fled, who you rely on for your testimony, were on Valerius's payroll, acting as his infiltrators within Kaelen's nascent intelligence network. She pointed to Kaelen's golden chain. The gold is the proof of the sacrifice Kaelen made to secure the stability you now enjoy. His actions broke a curse that threatened both our realms. Your actions, Senator Varys, risked a full-scale inter-realm war for personal profit. Elias quickly scanned the data. The details were too specific, the encryption too complex to be simple forgery. He looked at Varys, realizing the depth of the deception. Senator Varys, Elias said, his voice cold with betrayal. These charges of corruption and treason against the council must be investigated. Immediately. Varys, seeing his position crumble, made one final, desperate move. He activated a concealed signal jammer, a specialized device meant to block high-frequency communications, and lunged toward Kaelen. You won't escape a human execution, traitor. Varys screamed, pulling a concealed, specialized silver knife, designed to incapacitate vampires, and lunging toward Seraphina. Kaelen reacted with blinding speed. He intercepted Varys before the senator could reach the queen. Kaelen's instincts as a hunter, honed by years of combat, were flawless. He disarmed Varys with a sharp strike to the wrist. The silver knife clattered harmlessly away. Seraphina, though capable of defending herself, watched Kaelen handle the threat with lethal efficiency. The sight of her consort defending her against a human enemy, in front of the entire council, was the ultimate display of their bond. Elias and the loyal sentinels immediately moved to restrain the struggling Varys. The evidence is clear, Seraphina announced, watching the subdued senator. The threat to peace came from within your council, fueled by a rogue vampire seeking power. Lord Valerius is neutralized and now, his human collaborators must face justice. The summit concluded not with conflict, but with a renewed, deepened peace. Varys and his accomplice were arrested and faced charges of high treason in the human realm, based on the evidence Kaelen provided. The final result was the Pact of Transparency. Seraphina agreed to establish a permanent mediator office within the Citadel, headed by Kaelen, giving the Human Council unprecedented access and information exchange. In return, the Council formally recognized Kaelen Thorne as the consort of the Vow and the Permanent Mediator, ending the charges of treason forever. Kaelen had achieved what no one thought possible. He had secured genuine, institutionalized peace between the realms, not through fear but through trust. Later that evening, Kaelen stood on the balcony of Seraphina's chambers, watching the combined human and vampire sentinel patrols circle the Citadel, a sight that once would have been impossible. Seraphina joined him, leaning against his chest, her hand resting on the gold chain. "The battle is over, my love," Seraphina murmured, her voice soft with contentment. "The realm is secure. The peace is absolute." "The peace is secured by the chain, my queen," Kaelen replied, looking down at her, his heart full. "And the vow is unending." He kissed her, sealing their fate under the new, unending dawn of their unified reign. The hunter and the queen, forever bound by an impossible love and an unbreakable golden promise. Years passed, marked not by the swift, ancient cycles of the Volkov citadel, but by the steady, predictable progress of true peace. The Pact of Transparency, mediated by the newly established office of the Consort, held fast. The cooperation between the vampire realm and the Council of the Dawn became a model for interspecies governance, something once deemed utterly impossible. Queen Seraphina Volkov's reign was characterized by stability, justice, and a profound shift away from the shadows. The magically treated glass panels in the citadel were expanded, allowing shafts of controlled sunlight to illuminate the chambers, symbolizing the new era of clarity and honesty. Seraphina was a ruler of unmatched authority, her decisions guided not by the inherent cruelty of her ancestors, but by the empathy and moral compass she had learned from her consort. Kaelen Thorne, the former hunter, became known simply as the Mediator. His office, strategically placed near Seraphina's throne room, was the nerve center of cross-realm communications. He used his private intelligence network, now fully operational and loyal, to anticipate and neutralize small threats, rogue vampire factions clinging to the old ways or human extremists who resented the peace. He was the sword that protected the fragile political ecosystem they had created. The golden chain of binding was never removed. It became the most sacred artifact in the Citadel, publicly displayed not as a shackle, but as the unbreakable symbol of the vow that saved them all. It pulsed with a constant, low warmth, a testament to the true devotion that defined their unique bond. Their relationship deepened from a necessary alliance to an eternal love. Seraphina found in Kaelen the anchor she desperately needed, a human heart capable of unwavering loyalty in the face of immortal power. Kaelen found in Seraphina the higher purpose he had sought his entire life, a challenge worthy of his sacrifice. They shared the duties of the realm, making decisions as equals. Kaelen often stood beside her on the dais during official functions, a bold presence against the pale backdrop of the ancient court. He was her voice to the human world, and her conscience in the vampire one. Even in peace, the past was never entirely silent. Elias, the leader of the Council of the Dawn, eventually retired, his faith in Kaelen's actions fully vindicated. He spent his final years as a revered historian, documenting the crypt of the First Light and the true devotion ritual, ensuring the truth of Kaelen's sacrifice would never be forgotten. The two corrupt sentinels were eventually caught and faced justice, closing the final loopholes of Valerius's conspiracy. The Volkov horde was slowly replenished, rebuilt through the shared economic treaties Kaelen had negotiated. Perhaps the most astonishing outcome of their impossible union was the future it secured. Vampires are immortal, but their capacity for procreation is mythically rare, reserved only for the strongest, most stable bloodlines. After many peaceful decades, a whisper began to travel through the Citadel, a quiet excitement that swelled into joyous declaration. Seraphina gave birth to an heir, a daughter named Alina, whose hair was the luminous silver of the Volkov line, but whose eyes were a striking, unmistakable shade of hunter blue. Alina was neither fully vampire nor fully human. She was the embodiment of the Pact, the living proof that two opposed worlds could merge and flourish. The golden chain pulsed brightest on the day of Alina's birth, confirming that the new era was permanent. Kaelen held his daughter, looking at Seraphina, his queen, his consort, his love, standing beside him. He was a protector who had risked everything, a mediator who had secured peace, and a father who had defined the future. The vow is passed on, Kaelen, Seraphina said, her voice filled with love and hope. The unending dawn is real. Kaelen smiled, the gold of the chain warm against his skin, the future bright in his daughter's eyes. It always was, Seraphina, Kaelen replied. It always was. The hunter and the queen had secured their eternity.